Emily Beatriz Azevedo Senna was born in Várzea Grande, a city in the Brazil state of Mato Grosso. She lived with her mother and her stepfather, who became a father figure to her when she was 6. He worked as a radiology technician at Santa Helena Hospital in the nearby city of Cuiabá. The family lived a modest yet close-knit life. Emily was known for her kind nature, calm demeanor. Classmates and neighbors often described her as a gentle person who avoided conflict. At 16, Emily found out she was pregnant, a surprising discovery that she ultimately accepted. The father was a young partner of similar age. Instead of pulling away, he supported her throughout the situation. They started living together and he actively participated in getting ready for the baby's arrival. He went with Emily to doctor visits, assisted with planning, took part in conversations about names and baby items. Despite their youth, her partner demonstrated a strong sense of responsibility, dedication. Although their relationship encountered challenges because of their age, it was characterized as stable, supportive. For Emily, becoming pregnant was a major milestone in her life. She eagerly talked about her future daughter and shared her excitement with family, friends. Her mother and stepfather were very supportive, helping her choose furniture, buy clothes, prepare the nursery. Their home was filled with joy and anticipation. They celebrated the gender reveal twice, once with her partner's relatives and again with Emily's family. Friends remembered how glowing she looked when discussing her journey to motherhood. In another part of Mato Grosso, Natalie Helen Martins Pereira, a 25-year-old married to Christian Albino Cibalho de Arruda, 28, was raising their 3 children, a girl and 2 boys. Natalie worked in public safety, officially employed by the fire department while also taking nursing classes. To others, she seemed organized, responsible. However, beneath this surface, her life was more complicated. Several years ago, Natalie had a medical procedure that tied her fallopian tubes, which prevented her from becoming pregnant naturally. Despite this, she began claiming that she was expecting another child. To support her claims, Natalie created fake medical documents, including ultrasound images, and told others that she was having a baby girl. Christian believed her and shared the news on social media, posted the ultrasound images, even organized a gender reveal party. To make her story seem more convincing, Natalie often posted pictures of herself with what looked like a growing belly or loose clothing and explained her physical appearance as a sign of her impending delivery. In reality, this was all part of a carefully orchestrated and emotionally manipulative lie, a fake pregnancy that relied on fabricated evidence. Natalie not only staged a fake situation but also created an online identity. She joined various online groups for expecting mothers, where she pretended to be a helpful member who often offered items like baby clothes, diapers, and accessories to other moms-to-be. However, there was a catch. The items could only be picked up in person at her house, and the person collecting them had to come alone. This was a deliberate strategy where her online persona was used to make contacts and choose potential targets. No one in Natalie's close circle, neither Christian nor her family, realized that her cheerful demeanor was a meticulously crafted facade. She was intent on making her story a reality, regardless of the consequences. A few weeks before her disappearance, Emily started participating more often in online groups for expecting mothers. She shared her pregnancy thoughts, sought advice, and welcomed support. In one of these forums, she was approached by a user. Her messages were friendly. She offered to donate items for Emily's future daughter, such as clothes, baby blankets, and diapers. This seemed generous, and Emily was genuinely interested. Their conversation soon turned more personal. The user came across as warm and caring, emphasizing her desire to help. When Emily suggested bringing someone with her, like her partner or sister, Natalie became uneasy. She mentioned that her street had many nosy neighbors, and she wanted to avoid attracting any attention. Although her responses were unclear, they didn't raise any major red flags. Emily talked it over with her family and initially decided against going by herself. However, she changed her mind after Natalie offered to send a driver to pick her up, saying the car would be from a ride-sharing service like Uber. On March 12, 2024, around noon, a car came to pick up Emily. However, the driver, as later discovered by investigators, was not affiliated with any ride-sharing service. It was believed that he was either a relative or a friend of Natalie. The car was an ordinary civilian vehicle. Unaware of any potential danger, Emily got in after telling her mother that she would be back soon. She thought the outing would be just a quick trip to collect some donated items before returning home. After more than an hour without any updates from Emily, her mother, Anna Paula Meridian, started to feel anxious. Soon, messages began to come from Emily's phone. However, instead of soothing her worries, the texts only increased her anxiety. Emily claimed she was fine, enjoying a pastry, and would be back soon. Yet, something felt wrong. The language used was strange, overly formal, and didn't match Emily's usual way of writing. Anna quickly realized that someone else must have sent the messages. She attempted to call Emily, but there was no response, and her voice messages went unheard. As her concern grew, the family reached out to friends and acquaintances in hopes of finding Emily. Emily's stepfather was working at the hospital that day. He sensed something was wrong. He knew Emily had intended to pick up some items, and her failure to answer calls made him even more anxious. That evening, the family quickly decided to file a missing person report. At that time, no one knew where Emily was, who the driver was, or where she was headed. The only clue the family had was an online conversation with the woman, who mentioned living in the Jardim Florianopolis neighborhood in Cuiabá. This clue marked the beginning of a search by family members and friends. Worried and desperate, they knocked on doors in the neighborhood, checked the streets, and attempted to call the number mentioned in the messages, but no one answered. Communication had completely stopped. Emily's phone was still on, but she wasn't answering. Then, Natalie suddenly changed her online behavior. She stopped replying to chat group messages and withdrew her support for others. Later, it was revealed that shortly after Emily left home, Natalie deleted all her messages and her account. This disappearance from the online world only confirmed the family's deepest fears. This was not a chance occurrence. By the evening of March 12th, the search for Emily was in full swing. Her family had reached out to the local police, shared her photos on social media, and appealed to the public for assistance. The initial hours after her disappearance were filled with urgency and anxiety, but no one anticipated how drastically the situation would develop. The following morning, March 13, 2024, a woman arrived at the emergency room of Santa Helena Hospital in Cuiabá with a newborn. She was in a wheelchair and told the hospital staff that she had given birth at home the day before. She described the labor as quick and straightforward, so she hadn't felt the need for medical help at that time. Now, she said, she was just there for a post-delivery checkup. The woman introduced herself as Natalie. That morning, the hospital staff member on duty was Emily's stepfather, a radiology technician. Although he did not know Natalie personally, he immediately sensed that something was wrong when he saw her. The previous evening, Emily had gone missing, and one of the primary theories suggested it was linked to a conversation she had with an online stranger who was offering baby items. Emily had previously mentioned to both her mother and her stepfather that she met someone online. She even shared a photo of her from the messaging app. Emily's stepfather immediately recognized the woman in the photo as the same person Emily had been talking to before she disappeared. Natalie was holding a newborn baby that the doctors believed had just been born. However, something seemed unusual. Her behavior and physical state did not align with what one would expect from someone who had recently given birth. There were no visible signs of pain, post-labor symptoms, bleeding, or trauma. Medical staff also found that she was not producing milk when she tried to breastfeed. Even the way she stood and moved raised concerns. Even though she arrived in a wheelchair, she moved around confidently and chose to sit in a chair rather than needing to. A preliminary medical evaluation raised concerns. There were no signs that she had recently given birth. Her cervix was not dilated, and her uterus was of normal size, showing no changes or discharges that usually occur after delivery. This became crucial evidence that proved her story was false. The medical staff quickly informed hospital administrators and contacted local authorities about the situation. Emily's stepfather told investigators that Emily had gone missing the day before after planning to meet a woman. When he recognized the woman in front of him matched Emily's description and photo, his concerns grew. When officers arrived at the hospital, Natalie claimed that the newborn girl was her daughter, whom she had given birth to at home. She could not provide any documentation to support her claim, saying the birth was unexpected and there was no time to go to a medical facility. She answered questions calmly and showed no signs of distress. Investigators started looking into the origin of the newborn. They ordered emergency blood tests and DNA analysis. Medical professionals confirmed that the baby had been born within the last 24 hours, which matched the timeline of Emily's disappearance. This led to a troubling question: could this child be Emily's daughter? Investigators examined Natalie's phone and found deleted conversations, including exchanges with Emily. These messages showed that Emily had agreed to meet Natalie to receive baby items. This evidence indicated a clear pattern of deception. Natalie had created a false identity, gained trust, and arranged a meeting under false pretenses. At this point, the idea that Natalie had simply gone to the hospital for a checkup was no longer believable. Law enforcement began to suspect that Natalie may have brought a baby that she did not give birth to, but rather one that was taken from someone else. Their suspicions were confirmed when they analyzed ultrasound images that Natalie had shared on social media. Investigators discovered that these images did not belong to her. They were taken from another woman's profile, a woman living in a different state, who had no known connection to Natalie. As these discrepancies emerged, the police shifted their focus to finding Emily. The infant Natalie had brought to the hospital was placed in temporary protective custody, under the care of social services, until her biological identity could be verified. Shortly after, Natalie was taken to the police station for formal questioning. At first, she remained silent. When directly asked about the child's origin, she gave vague answers, claiming that everything had been explained and that nothing wrong had occurred. Although she appeared calm and showed no signs of panic, her reluctance to provide a clear explanation led investigators to suspect that she was stalling. Only after investigators showed her the medical exam results, which disproved her claim of giving birth, along with the recovered text messages linking her to Emily, did Natalie change her story. She then shared her initial account of events. She claimed to have met Emily in online parenting groups and said that Emily was struggling in her relationship. Emily had thought about not keeping the baby. Natalie asserted that she offered to take care of the child and that Emily had agreed. However, law enforcement had doubts about this explanation. Emily's family strongly denied any claims that she intended to give up her daughter. They insisted that Emily had been excited about her baby's arrival and never showed any doubts about keeping her. The whole family actively prepared for the new baby by buying clothes, setting up a nursery, and celebrating together. Emily's mother and stepfather emphasized that she viewed her future daughter as the most important part of her life, and the thought of giving the baby away was entirely unthinkable for her. This information was part of the official case file, and Natalie's statements were now being examined for inconsistencies. When faced with increasing evidence, Natalie eventually changed her story. In a second interview with investigators, she confessed that she had tricked Emily into coming to a house by pretending to offer baby items. Emily arrived alone, as they had agreed in their online communication. Emily then began to feel pain and sat down, complaining of cramps. At that moment, Natalie approached her from behind and forcefully restrained her. After Emily lost consciousness, Natalie bound her wrists and ankles with materials she had available. She then tried to deliver the baby by making an incision in Emily's abdomen with a sharp kitchen tool. Emily received no medical assistance and ultimately died due to severe blood loss. Natalie did not express any regret in her statement. She claimed that she wanted to take care of the baby and did not mean to cause any harm. However, the way she acted, using restraints and preparing certain materials, suggested that her actions were thought out beforehand. As Natalie continued to speak, her versions of events became more inconsistent with the facts. Investigators ultimately determined that the incident was pre-planned. After questioning Natalie, law enforcement started investigating all places associated with her. One property in the Jardim Florianopolis area received special attention. This private residence, owned by Natalie's brother, was said to be where she met Emily. During the property inspection, police noticed an area behind the house where the ground looked recently disturbed. The soil was uneven. They quickly cordoned off the area and called in forensic specialists. As the specialists carefully removed the top layer of soil, they discovered that a body had been buried. Emily's body was found in a shallow grave, covered loosely with dirt and debris. The way the body was positioned indicated it had been disposed of hurriedly. Her wrists and ankles showed signs of restraints, including ropes and bits of plastic cable. Investigators later determined that the bindings were made from old internet wiring. The grave itself was poorly dug, without the use of tools, and was barely big enough to hold the body. Emily's body displayed clear signs of trauma on her body. Her face had visible injuries, including bruises, swelling, and scratches. Forensic experts noted damage to her cheekbones and nose. There were also marks on her neck that suggested she had been choked, as well as bruises on her wrists indicating she had been forcefully held down. The autopsy revealed that these injuries occurred while she was alive, implying the use of significant force. It was determined that her death resulted from severe blood loss due to a deep wound in her abdomen. The precise T-shaped incision in her lower abdomen indicated that it was not an accident. Forensic experts indicated that the shape and depth of the cut suggested the perpetrator had a basic understanding of internal anatomy and made an effort to avoid injuring the baby. This degree of knowledge is rare for someone without medical training, although it could be obtained by watching detailed instructional videos. This was further confirmed by analyzing Natalie's internet search history. A key finding was that the burial site had been prepped in advance. Initially, Natalie claimed she dug the grave after the incident, but she later changed her story, admitting it was prepared the day before the meeting. A forensic team carefully examined the scene. Using chemical tests, they discovered important traces of biological material both inside the house and throughout the property. Blood stains were present in multiple rooms. Although some parts of the floor had been cleaned, residues were still left in the tile grout and seams. These findings were meticulously recorded and included in the criminal case. Given the amount of evidence, authorities officially reclassified the case as a premeditated crime with aggravating factors. Immediately after her arrest, Natalie stated that she acted alone and that her husband, relatives, anyone else were unaware of her plans. At that time, the house was occupied by her brother and his wife. Natalie stated that her brother and his wife were not home when the crime happened, but investigators could not confirm this. Their exact whereabouts during that time remained uncertain. A significant question was whether they could genuinely be unaware of a freshly dug pit on the property or that someone had come in to help clean the house. However, it was later established that Natalie had been to the house several times leading up to the incident, under the pretense of helping with chores or spending the weekend. This made her visits seem normal and unremarkable to those living there. Forensic experts noted that it would be very challenging for a single person to dig a pit, commit an act of violence, perform a makeshift procedure, move a body, clean the crime scene, hide evidence, and leave the area without drawing attention, all within a short period. This is especially true given the logistical difficulties involved. The body was wrapped in fabric and required various materials, while the cleaning process included removing items, white blood, and washing clothing. Each of these tasks demanded time, strength, and coordination. Did Natalie truly act alone? At the time of the investigation, there were increasing suspicions, but no solid evidence was found linking anyone else to the case. No family member had been officially identified as an accomplice. Cayo Police Chief Fernando Alvarez Albuquerque said authorities are continuing to investigate whether Natalie's husband, brother, and the driver had anything to do with the death and burial. After the body was officially identified and all forensic procedures were completed, Emily's family received permission for a burial. Because of the condition of the remains, the service was conducted quickly. The ceremony was brief and did not include a traditional farewell. It was held privately, attended only by immediate family members, Emily's mother, stepfather, the young father of the baby, and a few other relatives. The family was devastated by the loss. They were deeply affected emotionally and unable to speak publicly about their grief. Emily's mother, as reported by those close to her, was in a fragile emotional state and had withdrawn from social interactions, avoiding even her neighbors. Emily's partner, who never expected to become a father under such tragic circumstances. According to the family, he has remained dedicated. He frequently visits the baby. Despite his young age, he has shown a desire to be actively involved in raising his daughter. The newborn, who was rescued after the incident, has been placed temporarily in the care of her grandmother, Emily's mother, a decision made by child welfare authorities and the district attorney's office. Emily's stepfather is also considered one of the responsible guardians. During the first few weeks, medical professionals monitored the baby's condition closely. Fortunately, she stayed in stable health. After receiving medical clearance, the baby was taken home to the same place where her mother had lived. The reason for Natalie's actions remained a key topic of conversation. Even though she was already a mother of 3, she pretended to be pregnant for almost 9 months, creating an illusion of expecting another child. She went to great lengths to forge medical records and create a believable story online, portraying herself as an expectant parent on social media. However, her goal was not just to have another baby. She specifically sought out expecting mothers who were likely to have daughters. Her method of selecting targets, arranging the setting, and researching how to remove and take baby indicated that her actions were carefully planned. Natalie is still in custody, waiting for her trial. The charges against her are still active, and investigators believe the evidence supporting these charges is strong. Emily's case has gained significant attention and raised serious concerns, influencing how online interactions are perceived, particularly among vulnerable groups. Karen Slattery, born September 18, 1969. She has a younger sister named Debbie. The relationship between the two sisters grew closer. The Slattery family lives in a spacious house with a pool near the beach in the small resort town of Delray Beach, Florida. From an early age, Karen was friendly, healthy, and spirited. In high school, Karen considered starting to work at the educational institution she attended. There was a program that offered courses for aspiring nannies. After completing the training, it became clear that Karen was a natural nanny because she got along well with children. She was even trusted to look after the children of local police officers, making her quite popular and in demand in this field. Around the same time, she discovered a new passion for diving and excelled to the point. At that time, Karen's family lived in one of the safest areas. Not only was it a wealthy community, but outsiders rarely wandered in. However, on Sunday, March 24th, an event unfolded that shattered this ideal life. That day, her mother took 14-year-old Karen off at the Helm family home, where she would care for their 2 children, ages 3 and 7. The children's parents promised to return around midnight to take Karen home. Around 9 p.m., it was time for the girls to get ready for bed, and by 9:30 p.m., the children were fast asleep. Karen went back to the living room, called a friend to discuss plans for an upcoming trip, and then called a classmate who was also a nanny. After chatting, she mentioned she was going to have a snack and would call back shortly. However, Karen never made that call. She frequently called her mother to provide a sense of security, especially when she was alone in a strange house. The last call to her mom was at 10 p.m., during which she assured her that everything was fine and that she'd be home in a couple of hours. When the children's parents returned home, they immediately noticed that the lights were off throughout the house, even though they typically left lights on when Karen was there. They called for her, but there was no response. They walked down the hallway to the kitchen and found a large pool of blood next to a broken telephone. There was no body, but a bloody trail led from the kitchen toward the bedroom, where light was visible under the door. The husband instructed his wife to run outside and call the police, while he hesitated, debating whether to open the door, fearing that the criminal might still be inside and armed. Ultimately, he chose to wait for the police. When law enforcement entered the bedroom, they discovered the body of Karen next to the bed. She was stripped below the waist, and it appeared she had been abused. Karen had multiple stab wounds, and her face was so mutilated that it was difficult to identify her. She was recognized by her clothing. During the investigation of the crime scene, chewed gum was found in the bedroom, along with a broken window with a cut mesh screen through which the killer likely entered. Outside, footprints were found, as well as a bare footprint in front of the broken window. Inside the house, there were also traces of bare feet, suggesting the criminal removed his shoes before entering. The house were examined with luminol, revealing numerous traces of blood. A large quantity of blood was also discovered in the shower, indicating that the killer had used it after the crime. In the kitchen, where the attack had occurred, the most footprints were found, along with a bloody hammer, which was believed to be the weapon used in the initial blow. However, the knife used to mutilate the victim was never found. At first glance, no valuables appeared to be missing. After examining the crime scene, detectives visited Karen's home to inform her parents of the tragic news. It was well past midnight, and her parents were anxiously waiting for her. They could not call the Helms. They assumed Helms were simply delayed and that their daughter would return later, but it turned out to be much worse. This incident shocked the local community. It had always been one of the quietest and safest places in the area. The main suspects initially became the Helms couple. The police searched for any suspicious clues, particularly since the family had moved out of the house just days after the murder. However, this idea was quickly dismissed. It turned out that the family simply could not feel safe in the house. No signs of a struggle were found on the spouses' bodies, no blood stains were present on their clothes, and their footprints did not match the criminals, leading to their exclusion from the list of suspects. After a more thorough examination of the Helms house, it was confirmed that nothing valuable was missing. The only item that could not be found was a pair of leather gloves. Perhaps the criminal used them to avoid leaving fingerprints. The forensic expert determined that Karen received 18 wounds, inflicted by a knife similar to a penknife, approximately 7–8 centimeters long. Her throat was cut 4 times, leaving Karen unable to speak or call for help. Of the 11 wounds, 7 were fatal. The victim rapidly bled to death. The attack was so swift that Karen did not even have time to react or resist the criminal. No defensive wounds were found on her. According to the forensic expert, when she was dragged into the bedroom, she was already unconscious, and the abuse occurred only afterward. The collected samples were sent to the lab for examination, but given the technology of 1984, this process took many months. Karen's funeral took place on March 29, 1984, and many rallied around the Slattery family during that time. The family was heartbroken. The victim's sister, Debbie, was also present at the funeral. Even 40 years later, she recalled how devastating the experience was for her. During the funeral, Debbie, who was an 11-year-old child at the time, thought her sister was just sleeping when she saw her in the coffin. She reached out and touched Karen's nose, at which point she realized that Karen was, in fact, dead. Her mother yelled at her, and this incident at the funeral only worsened Debbie's trauma. No one knew why it happened. Debbie couldn't even sleep, fearing that she might become the next victim of the criminal. Their family was in danger. Local residents were also worried, demanding that the detectives quickly solve the case and find the perpetrator in order to secure the streets of the city. A family friend created a memorial fund intended to raise awareness and gather information. Various fundraising events were held, including charity concerts and sports tournaments, which managed to accumulate $50,000, a significant sum by 1980 standards. This serious reward aimed to help find witnesses who would come forward with valuable information about the tragedy. People were very scared. The number of other crimes had increased compared to the previous year, which sparked true hysteria. By mid-April, rumors were circulating up and down the coast, even among schoolchildren. At one point, students began to suspect a boy who knew Karen. The day after the murder, everyone noticed that he came to school with scratched hands. Later, he carved the words "Trust no one" into his desk, leading to a report to the police. An investigation cleared him of suspicion but provided a new lead, which also turned out to be a dead end. Another possible suspect emerged, Christopher Wilder. He emigrated to the USA from his native Australia in 1971. Throughout the 70s, he was a recurrent suspect in abuse assault cases. Wilder abducted, abused, and killed girls, including models he lured to photo shoots, claiming at least 12 victims. He used various methods to carry out his crimes, including shooting, stabbing, strangulation, and even electric shock as a form of torture. When police finally tracked him down, a shootout occurred, resulting in Christopher being killed. People were quick to spread rumors that Christopher Wilder had also attacked Karen, as he had been in the area at the time of the crime. This even led to attempts to tighten legislation for abuse offenders. However, it was later confirmed that he was accounted for in Oklahoma on the day of the murder. No one mourned Karen's death more than her father, Eugene. He had already lost a father, mother, and now his eldest daughter was gone. The entire family actively participated in public activities and became part of a group called Parents of Murdered Children. Together with volunteers, they distributed more than 500 posters featuring Karen's image, hoping this would help lead the police to the criminal. Thanks to these efforts, some interesting information did emerge. One witness claimed that on the night of the 24th, a suspicious man was seen walking along the street a few blocks from where Karen was murdered. Unfortunately, this lead turned out to be a dead end due to the lack of details. During this time, the sheriff's department acquired a new laser technology that improved their fingerprint collection process. This device sped up the gathering of evidence and unveiled details that were previously overlooked. Investigators utilized it at the murder scene and successfully collected numerous new fingerprints overnight that had gone unnoticed before. They had just started analyzing this new evidence when another crime occurred 10 kilometers away from the previous murder site on May 29, 1984, just 2 months after the attack on Karen. The police were dispatched to a house in the nearby small town of Boca Raton. Upon arrival, officers discovered a petite 38-year-old woman lying in bed, covered in blood, with a pillow obscuring her face and a disfigured head underneath. The victim, Georgiana Wardens, had been struck with a hammer. The hammer was also found nearby, similar to the case of Karen. Georgiana, born on February 3, 1946, was a divorced mother of 2. Georgiana worked hard to support her children. On the day of her death, Georgiana had visited relatives and friends before returning home. She and her children went to bed around 11:30 p.m. Everything seemed normal. The next morning, her eldest daughter, 13-year-old, woke up to the sound of the phone ringing. Normally, Georgiana would answer, but this time there was no response. When the girl went downstairs to answer the call, she decided to check on her mother. When she knocked on the bedroom door without receiving an answer, she entered the room and discovered her mother's lifeless body on the bed, with blood everywhere. Terrified, she called her father. When the father arrived, he contacted the police. Officers found evidence of 2 attempted break-ins at the crime scene. The attacker had tortured, abused Georgiana before showering and leaving, much like the previous case with Karen. A knife was discovered in the room and was sent for examination. Georgiana had suffered 5 stab wounds and multiple blunt force trauma injuries likely caused by the same hammer found at the scene. There were also deep lacerations in her genital area and signs of strangulation on her neck. Forensic experts determined that after receiving her injuries, she likely lived for no more than 5 minutes, and the extreme violence suggested the attacker may have been someone known to her. Investigators checked her ex-husband but quickly cleared him due to a solid alibi. Forensic experts searched the area around the house and found a suspicious package in a vacant lot across the street, containing a pair of bloody sneakers wrapped in a towel that matched items from Georgiana's home. The police requested assistance from neighboring towns that had previously used laser technology to collect fingerprints. In the 1980s, there was no CODIS database, so investigative resources were limited. Detective began analyzing suspicious cases from recent months. He noticed commonalities among the victims, including Karen and Georgiana, who, despite their age difference, shared similar physical traits and both had their faces covered during the attacks. Both crimes occurred with a knife and a hammer being used. On May 22, a young man from Boca Raton, who returned home late one evening to his mother's house, noticed a stranger attempting to break in through the window. He chased after him, but the criminal escaped on a high-speed bicycle. However, the young man managed to catch up with him, forcing the criminal to abandon his bicycle and flee. Before climbing into the house, The assailant had removed his shoes, leaving his sneakers behind. On May 28, another crime occurred. A nearby restaurant was robbed, and a 20-year-old waitress was assaulted and held at gunpoint, with the perpetrator escaping with $600. Law enforcement in both cities worked diligently to find leads to stop this series of crimes. Meanwhile, community activists sought changes in legislation to address these violent offenses. The detective discovered a connection between all these events, but his suspicions needed to be confirmed. She was able to provide a fairly detailed description. The detective compared the sketch he had created with a stack of photographs of criminals known for abuse assaults. Finally, this led to a result. She helped create the sketch identified one of the criminals as Dwayne Owen, a man with an extensive criminal history, multiple convictions for robbery and abuse crimes. Thus, authorities had a prime suspect, but unfortunately, he had gone on the run. On May 30th, a patrol officer noticed a suspicious man leaving the city on a bicycle. The patrol officer stopped him and asked for an identification. He was 23-year-old Dwayne Owen, who was wanted. All the officers had received a bulletin with his photo. At the station, he was fingerprinted, and comparisons with the crime scene evidence confirmed that he was indeed a very dangerous criminal. In addition to his long list of outstanding arrest warrants, he was considered a suspect in the Georgiana Wardens and Karen Slattery cases. The detective interrogated him. Their conversation lasted about 20 hours. During this time, Dwayne never asked for a lawyer. He confessed to several burglaries, admitted to leaving his sneakers and bicycle behind during one unsuccessful break-in, but he denied any involvement in the murders of Karen and Georgiana. Curiously, Dwayne appeared to enjoy playing cat and mouse with the detective, even reciting poetry and boasting about his criminal talents, as if seeking praise. The detective then contacted another investigator who had previously worked with Dwayne in 1982, engaging with him daily for several weeks. Ultimately, with the help of another officer, Dwayne admitted that he had killed someone, although he did not provide details. While comparing fingerprints found at the crime scene, they managed to find a match. His print was on the book he had snatched from Georgiana's hands before killing her. Gradually, through various tactics, he extracted information from Dwayne, who ultimately confessed to 2 victims. He described how he selected Georgiana by riding his bike through the neighborhood and peering into the windows of homes until he finally managed to break in. According to him, the crime was not premeditated, as he intended to rob Georgiana, but upon finding her asleep with a book, he decided to take advantage of the situation. After the first blow, she screamed, prompting him to hit her several more times with a hammer to silence her. Dwayne also confessed to abusing her and mentioned that he took a shower before leaving, having already prepared clean clothes, which he left in a vacant lot next to the bicycle. Later, the police found those clothes linked to the murder of Karen, but he did not confess to that crime. All the detective could do was to take casts of the footprints left by the criminal at the Helms house and compare them with Dwayne's own. In any case, this evidence alone was not sufficient to charge him with the second murder. However, the police presented this evidence convincingly, leading Dwayne to believe they had something substantial against him. Dwayne later created a similar story, claiming he was walking down the street and spotted Karen through a window when she was tying the children's hair. He decided to leave, go to a local bar for a few drinks, then return to attack her. At around 11 p.m., he jumped back into the master bedroom through the window, grabbed a pair of women's gloves he found in the room, and grabbed a hammer from the bedroom closet. He looked out the master bedroom door and saw Karen in the living room watching TV. She eventually spotted him and ran toward the phone. Dwayne lunged at Karen and the phone, started stabbing her. Then he took her into the bedroom, just grabbed her legs and pulled her out, with her head behind her, and just closed the door. He said he just needed to abuse her. Dwayne discarded his pocket knife in the nearby sea. He emphasized that he changed his clothes and hid his bloody clothes in the bushes. He accused the detective of doing a poor job, insisting that if they had thoroughly inspected everything, they would have found the clothes. Additionally, he crafted a solid alibi. When he got home, he changed the clock and woke up his brother to remember the time, then reset the clock. If the police had questioned them, this could have supported his alibi. The police re-examined the area around the Helms home and were able to find bloody clothing and a pair of gloves that had gone missing from the Helms house. Notably, he did not harm the children. They remained peacefully asleep in the adjacent rooms. On June 21, 1984, Dwayne Owen was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, burglary, and abuse. The Slattery family realized they could seek justice. Everyone wanted the death penalty for Dwayne, but this was just the first step in a long process. Dwayne could appeal repeatedly and continue to live in prison, but the local community felt relieved that a dangerous killer was off the streets. Dwayne was born on February 13, 1961, in Michigan, into a dysfunctional family with addicted parents, with an alcoholic mother who died when he was 11, a father who committed to end one's own life when Dwayne was 13. He himself had been drinking and using banned substances since he was 9. Dwayne cycled through foster families and eventually ran away. By the age of 18, he had experienced significant violence. He joined the army and aspired to become a criminologist, attending a special school in Michigan, but after committing his first serious crime, that dream ended. Instead, he aimed to become a notorious criminal and moved to Florida to live with his brother. Dwayne began a series of crimes involving women, typically breaking into homes, robbing them, and sometimes abusing them. He accumulated numerous victims. His list of crimes continued to grow. In October 1985, his trial commenced, during which the prosecution presented a recording of Dwayne confessing to the murders of Georgiana and Karen. His lawyer claimed the confession was obtained under duress. The jury did not believe him and found him guilty, resulting in 2 death sentences. As expected, Dwayne filed multiple petitions for clemency. A year later, during another trial, Dwayne's brother spoke about his mental issues, and the defense tried to argue insanity but failed. Dwayne continued to appeal his sentence, ultimately reaching the Supreme Court. He convinced a judge that his confessions were obtained under pressure. In the 1990s, a retrial was ordered, and DNA retesting, aided by advancements in technology, showed a much higher probability of matches to Dwayne. The defense continued to argue insanity. To eliminate doubts, a fellow inmate revealed the location of the knife used in Karen's murder, which Dwayne had confessed to him. The police found the knife at the specified location and then had to exhume Karen's body for comparison, which dealt another blow to the Slattery family. By 1999, the prosecution presented new evidence, a point supported by several experts. Dwayne Owen was sentenced to death again. Detectives suspected Dwayne might be involved in other unsolved murders in the area, but he never confessed to them. His defense team continued to appeal, allowing him to live until June 15, 2023. Dwayne was finally executed, almost 40 years after Karen's death. Her mother, Carolyn, and sister, Debbie, witnessed Dwayne's final moments as he was administered a lethal injection. Debbie tried to make eye contact with the man who took her sister's life, but he kept his eyes closed throughout the ordeal. Dwayne Owen was pronounced dead at 6:14 p.m. after a lethal injection at the Florida State Prison, according to the office of Governor Ron DeSantis. One of Florida's longest-serving death row inmates, Owen was 23 at the time of the attack and 62 when he was executed. Debbie struggled with sleep issues for many years, and after the execution, decided to serve in law enforcement, eventually becoming the deputy sheriff of Monroe County. She stated that since she could not sleep peacefully because of people like Dwayne, she wanted to protect those who could. The al-Maliki family moved to the United States from Iraq when Noor was 4 years old. She was the first of 7 children born to Faleh Hassan al-Maliki and Siyam. Her name, Noor, means light of God. Although she fully embraced American culture, she also maintained her Iraqi heritage. She spoke Arabic fluently and identified as a Muslim, like her parents. However, in early 2009, she moved out from her parents' home after a disagreement about her lifestyle choices, which included wearing tight jeans, makeup, having boyfriends, and participating in modeling. Noor's pictures, many taken from her Facebook and MySpace accounts, circulated widely on the internet. They featured a beautiful young woman with long black hair and a thoughtful expression. Noor seldom smiled in these photos, possibly due to her past experience with braces. However, Her friends describe her as cheerful and humorous. At school, she was known for being fun-loving and easily made friends. She played tennis. Her style consisted of dark jeans, sandals, and flowing tops from Forever 21. In short, Noor was an American girl just like any other. At home, Noor lived in a much harsher environment. She was often responsible for taking care of her younger siblings. Her father, Fele, was strict and controlling. He disapproved of her socializing with boys, wearing jeans, or sharing photos of herself online. Noor's main duty was to obey his orders, or face punishment. He believed that the only change in her life would come when she married a man he chose for her back in Iraq. However, Noor envisioned a different future for herself. Having spent 16 years in the United States, she dreamed of becoming a teacher, marrying someone she truly loved, and most importantly, having the freedom to make her own decisions. Noor's friends have different accounts of what happened, but it's evident that her marriage was a focus for her parents. They deceived her into traveling to Iraq by saying they needed to visit a sick relative, but once they arrived, Noor discovered that she was there to be married. It's unclear if a wedding actually occurred. Some friends say she only attended an engagement ceremony, while others believe she was married against her will. Her parents, in police reports, insisted that a marriage did happen. Regardless, Noor returned to Arizona a few months later, without a husband, and moved back in with her family. Friends say she missed her younger siblings, and her parents needed assistance in taking care of them. The Al-Maliki family lived in a subdivision in Phoenix called Paradise Views, which looked comfortable and suggested they were achieving some of the tangible aspects of the American dream. Noor's mother had been hired by a California company to help prepare American soldiers for cultural differences they might encounter in the Middle East. This was an odd situation, given her struggle to fulfill a similar role in her own daughter's life. After Noor returned from Iraq, the atmosphere in the Al-Maliki home became tense. Noor took care of her siblings and worked on her school assignments for her high school diploma. However, by May 2008, tensions peaked. Noor's father discovered a photo of her with male friends on MySpace and disapproved. The conflict escalated to the point where Noor considered moving out. One day, after Noor using the family car to visit a cousin, her father reported it stolen. When Noor found out, she abandoned the car on the side of the road and walked away. According to police records, her father wanted to press charges against her to teach her a lesson, claiming that she was bringing shame to the family and that her plans to move out looked bad. Eventually, Noor did move in with a friend, but after several confrontations with her father and discovering that her mother gave her friend's family a hard time, so she decided to return home. Noor's 20th birthday in February 2009 became a breaking point. After another family fight, this one in the middle of the night, she phoned a friend to come and get her. Noor came running out the door wearing her pajamas, carrying a purse and a roll of gift wrap, as her father chased her across the lawn. Noor jumped into the back seat, and the friend drove away. That night, Noor moved in with the friend who had picked her up, ultimately enlisting the police to protect her as she retrieved her things from the family home. In the spring of 2009, Noor got her own apartment. Her friends helped her furnish it with a new mirror and a cloudy TV they found on Craigslist for $25. Noor worked hard to support herself. When her parents learned where she was working, they started showing up and insisting that she move back home. She then got a job across town as a hostess at Applebee's. They turned up there too, leaving her no choice but to abandon that job as well. With no source of income, she was forced to return home once more. The final blow-up came that summer. In June 2009, longtime family friend Amal Khalif awoke to find Noor sleeping in the family's van parked in the driveway. Noor said her parents had hit her. Amal, a mother of 4, took her in. To Noor's family, this was the ultimate indignity. Their daughter had chosen to live with another Iraqi family instead of her own. On July 20th, Noor's parents entered Amal's home unannounced and began banging on her bedroom door. Amal dialed 911 after Noor's father started regularly harassing the family. Amal's husband, Raiken, explained to him that Noor was free to live where she chose. "This is America," he said. In the weeks that followed, Noor began a romantic relationship with Marwan, Amal's son. When Noor's father learned about this, he threatened her, insisting that if she didn't leave her current home, there would be severe consequences. Although Noor attempted to obtain a restraining order, she never completed the necessary paperwork. On October 20, 2009, at 1:06 p.m., Noor sent a text message to a friend saying, "Her dad is here at the welfare office." She hadn't seen her father, Fele, since moving out of their home in Glendale months earlier, and his presence filled her with fear. She was aware that he would stop at nothing to regain control over her life. Noor was inside an Arizona Department of Economic Security office in Peoria when she sent the message, sitting next to Amal, Marwan's mother. The Al-Maliki family, especially Noor's father, felt anger and shame regarding her situation. In their view, a man's daughters are his property and must live with him until he chooses otherwise. Amal was at the office to fill out a change of address form for welfare benefits. Originally from Iraq, she had moved to the United States about 10 years ago. Since her English wasn't very strong, her friend accompanied her to help with translation. That day marked a troubling moment for Fele, as he took a disturbing step toward becoming an accused honor murderer. After her father entered the Department of Economic Security office, Noor sent a second text message to her best friend, Ashna Khan. Noor said that her dad was a manipulative jerk and that she had never met anyone so cruel. Meanwhile, Amal observed that Fele took a number at the counter and sat down near her and Noor. He was on his cell phone just as Noor was texting. He spoke for 5 minutes with his son, who was 18 months younger than Noor. Fele also chatted with a male relative in Detroit and his wife several times. Minutes after arriving, Fele left the office without saying anything. At 1:32, Noor sent a final text to Ashna that suggested she was feeling more at ease. Noor asked her friend if she would have time to meet. Eventually, Amal's number was called, and she and Noor approached the counter to handle their tasks. Amal remained suspicious of Fele, aware of his anger over her letting Noor move in with her. Before leaving the Arizona Department of Economic Security office, Amal wanted to check the parking lot for Fele and his 2000 silver gray Jeep Cherokee. Noor appeared less concerned. She mentioned that her dad might spit on her if he had the opportunity, but she seemed don't want to change her mind. The area looked clear, so they made their way to Amal's van. However, Amal soon realized that she had locked her keys inside the vehicle. She and Noor returned to the Arizona Department of Economic Security office to regroup. Amal then called her son and asked him to bring a spare key from home, which was about 20 minutes away. It was a sunny day with a temperature of 85 degrees Fahrenheit when Amal decided to wait outside the office. However, Noor was feeling thirsty and suggested they go to a nearby Mexican restaurant for a cold drink. As they walked west along the sidewalk beside the office and crossed the parking lot, Amal suddenly noticed a vehicle heading towards them. In a split second, she raised her hands instinctively to try to stop it. To her shock, she recognized Fele behind the wheel. The car collided with them, Amal dragging Noor across a raised median. The impact threw Amal about 27 feet away, leaving her unconscious and bleeding on the pavement. She sustained a broken pelvis, a broken femur, numerous cuts and bruises, but remained conscious. The Peoria police later estimated that the car was traveling at about 30 miles per hour. Fele raced out of the parking lot and headed west on Peoria Avenue. Noor sustained critical injuries, including severe brain and spinal injuries, as well as multiple fractures. Amal later told police that they were extremely upset with both her and Noor over their living situation. She indicated that Fele was determined to assert his control over his daughter. Shortly after fleeing the scene, Fele made calls on his cell phone to his wife, son, and at least 2 other family members. It was unclear whether his attack on the women was impulsive or premeditated. 3 detectives from the Peoria police arrived at the Al-Maliki home at 5 p.m. on October 20th, about 3 hours after the incident. Noor's brother, Ali, answered the door. He found himself in a difficult situation. He had been close to Noor in the past, but the ongoing conflict between Noor and their parents had strained their relationship, leading to weeks of silence between the siblings. He later informed friends in an email that he had started using hurtful names for his sister before they stopped communicating. Ali told Detective Chris Bowie that tensions had been rising at their parents' home since Noor returned from Iraq after leaving her arranged marriage. In his opinion, Noor had brought shame to the al-Maliki family. He claimed she had shown a lack of respect towards their parents and him since her return. She also continued to reject traditional Iraqi values. Ali shared his own struggles with his father, describing him as a habitual gambler who often visited Indian casinos in the Phoenix area. His mother, Siam, had been trying to reach him over the past few hours, indicating that something had happened to Noor. However, Ali insisted to the detectives that he had no knowledge of what had happened to her. On October 24th, Ali spoke to a television reporter about his sister. He mentioned that she had been making an effort to be disrespectful to their parents. He pointed out the differences between Iraqi and American cultures, saying, "Different cultures, different values. What makes sense to one culture doesn't necessarily make sense to another." Still, he expressed his profound sadness, saying, "Seeing Noor at the hospital just broke his heart. Nobody should have to go through that." Fele crossed the Mexican border into Nogales, Sonora, around the same time that Ali was being questioned in Glendale. He soon parked his Jeep in a mall parking lot and checked into a hotel. At 5:30 p.m., he called his cousin in Phoenix. The next day, October 21st, Peoria police issued a warrant for Fele's arrest, alleging at that point 2 counts of aggravated assault. That day, a detective contacted Noor's mother via phone. She mentioned that she was driving back from her job in California. She claimed that all she knew was that there was a family problem of an unspecified nature. The detective, Bill Lang, then informed Siam that her husband had intentionally slammed into Noor and Amal with his Jeep and fled. Siam told Lang that the woman was a liar and that her family was dirty, referring to Amal. Siam repeatedly insisted that she hadn't communicated with her husband about the incident. Bill informed Siam that Noor's condition was grave. Siam replied that she wanted to see her daughter as soon as possible, but the detective expressed concern that Siam and others might pose further danger to Noor. On October 22nd, 2 days after the assaults, a Glendale pharmacist informed police that someone had phoned in a prescription for Fele. He remained a fugitive. That day, Peoria detectives learned that on October 22nd, a young man, possibly of Middle Eastern descent, and a woman wearing a veil had picked up prescription medicine for diabetes in Fele's name. Detectives returned to the Ali home on October 26th for a follow-up interview with Ali and his mother, Siam. By then, the detectives had examined phone records, which showed that Fele had been in touch with his immediate family and others around the time of the assaults. Siam admitted that she had lied in her earlier interview with police but continued to deny knowing her husband's whereabouts. Mother and son also admitted they had picked up the medicine at the pharmacy, but Siam insisted she had thrown the pill bottles out of her car window, although she couldn't provide a reason for having done so. Siam again blamed her one-time friend Amal for what had happened in the Arizona Department of Economic Security office parking lot. Siam alleged that Amal got what was coming to her because she was the matriarch of a family that was allegedly flush with banned substance abusers and thieves. Later that evening, Ali met alone with Detective Bill at a Glendale restaurant, away from his mother. He provided new details of his father's call to him before the assaults. Fele had just seen Noor and Amal at the Arizona Department of Economic Security office, he said. Ali explained that his father sounded angry, so Ali told he to go home. However, Fele later phoned Ali to say he had run down Noor and Amal with his car. He told Ali to man up because he wouldn't be around anymore. On October 25th, British customs officials informed U.S. immigration authorities that Fele was in custody in London. He had arrived on a plane from Mexico City using his own name and U.S. passport. A computer check showed that Fele was a wanted man in Arizona. British customs soon put him on a Delta flight to Atlanta, where the federal authorities have a port of entry for incoming fugitives. On October 28th, Mexican authorities in Nogales contacted Peoria police, reporting that they had found Fele's Jeep in a mall parking lot. Crime scene investigators later found hair fibers, human tissue on and under the front bumper of the vehicle. On October 29th, Peoria detectives Chris Bowie and Jeff Balson sat across from their suspect in Georgia. Fele waived his Miranda rights against self-incrimination, allowing the detectives to question him. Initially, Fele told them that he had run over the two women in a freak accident. He tried to sound reasonable, why he would kill his daughter with a vehicle if he wanted to do so. Fele mentioned that if he wanted to kill her, he would go buy a gun and that he knew where they lived. He stated that he had no problem with her and that this was not the first time she had left the house. He insisted that he had just lost control of the car. Detective Bill warned him that anger could lead to loss of self-control. Fele continued to insist that no premeditation was involved. Like his wife, he blamed Amal for what had happened, claiming she had stolen their daughter from them. He insisted that he loved Noor, noting that his cell phone contained several photos of her, but he argued that it was wrong for her to become too Americanized. Fele claimed he had stayed at a Nogales hotel for 2 nights, during which time a stranger had given him about $1,900 in cash for his Jeep and agreed to make sure some paperwork got to Ali. Although unconfirmed, a more likely scenario, Fele's cousin or someone else close to Fele delivered the money, diabetes medicine, and a suitcase filled with clothes that Fele had with him when British authorities arrested him. Detective Bill asked Fele whether his family was on his side. Fele didn't reply directly. Instead, he said he would certainly help a friend or family member in a similar predicament. It's their culture, he explained. When Fele asked what he would do if he had such a disobedient daughter, Detective Bill replied that he would not run his daughter over with a car. He finally confessed that he had actually intended to harm Noor and Amal. Fele was booked into the Clayton County Jail, Georgia, and waived extradition on October 31st. The Peoria detectives escorted him back to Arizona. The judge set his bail at $5 million. Doctors at hospital pronounced Noor clinically brain dead at 7 a.m. on November 2nd. Several members, including her mother and brother, were by Noor's bedside when her heart stopped beating at 11:54 a.m. A urinary tract infection that spread to Noor's heart was the cause of death. Days later, a Maricopa County grand jury indicted Fele on charges of first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and leading the scene of an accident. Noor's violent death struck a nerve worldwide, especially after a county prosecutor officially labeled it an honor killing. Noor's life was never the same after she rebelled against her parents and their culture, leaving her arranged marriage. Time and again, she tried to live with her family over the final year of her life, but it didn't work. Fele and Siam considered her tainted, someone who had humiliated them by leaving the Iraqi husband her father had chosen for her. Fele was furious when, after Noor returned from Iraq, he found a photo of her with several male friends. In his mind, Noor shouldn't have been chummy with men other than her husband, to whom she remained legally married. However, Noor stood up for herself. The photographs on her page were not racy, just images of a young woman with a beautiful face. Noor then found work as a server at an Applebee's restaurant, where she made new friends. One of her co-workers recalls that Noor quit after her father learned that she was employed at an establishment that served liquor. Some of Fele and Siam's concerns about their daughter's living arrangements may have been justified. Amal reported to Peoria police that she took in Noor because she had nowhere to go after leaving her parents' home. Amal's primary concern was providing shelter for Noor, not supporting a romantic relationship between Noor and her son. She emphasized that just days before the assaults, she encouraged Noor to reach out to her parents to start a conversation. Following his arrest and incarceration at the Maricopa County Jail, Fele regularly spoke on the phone with family members, unaware that authorities were secretly recording the calls. During one conversation, he asked his cousin, "How is she now?" They spoke in Arabic, which was later translated into English. When his cousin asked, "Who's she?" Fele replied, "Noor." His cousin then confirmed, "She's gone." His cousin advised he to take care of himself and to talk to their lawyers about making it clear that it was not supposed to be a murder. He also suggested that ask the Iraqi consulate to intervene with the American government, linking the situation to concepts of honor and dishonor. He stated, "An Iraqi is worth nothing without honor." Fele continued to talk with his wife about the issue of honor killings during their phone conversations. The trial began in January 2011 and was notable as the first honor killing case to be tried in Arizona. Amal Khalif testified for the prosecution. On February 22, 2011, a Phoenix jury convicted Fayleh al-Maliki, an immigrant from Iraq, of second-degree murder for running over and killing his daughter. Prosecutors labeled the case as an honor killing, arguing that Fayleh acted because he perceived his daughter as becoming too westernized. Fayleh was also found guilty of aggravated assault for injuring Amal Khalif during the incident in a parking lot in suburban Phoenix in October 2009. He faced 2 additional charges for leaving the scene of the accident. Defense attorneys argued that his daughter's death and the injuries to Amal were accidental, claiming he only intended to spit on Amal, whom he believed was influencing his daughter to distance herself from their family. However, during police questioning, a detective testified that Fayleh admitted to intentionally running over his daughter, though in the recorded interview he referred to the incident as an accident. Amal also testified during the 4-week trial, stating that he ignored Noor's cries to stop before he hit her. He showed little emotion when the jury read the verdict. In April 2011, Fayleh was sentenced, at age 50, on multiple counts. For murdering his daughter he was sentenced to 16 years, for injuring her boyfriend's mother he received 15 years, and for leaving the scene of a crime without permission he received 3.5 years. Because they are to be served consecutively, Fayleh received a total of 34.5 years in prison as his penalty. Ali and his family chose to remain silent during the sentencing. Accompanied by his 2 attorneys, Fayleh approached the lectern in front of the judge and began by apologizing in a soft voice to everyone present, to Amal, to his own family, and to the judge. Fayleh wished he were dead instead of Noor, Fayleh said. The expression of remorse was a far cry from what he had said to his wife in the secretly recorded jailhouse tapes after his arrest. The tapes revealed that his sole concern was how to fabricate a story that would divert attention from him. Judge Steinle took more than half an hour to impose the sentence. He stated that it had troubled him from day one that the press had given the case a moniker. It was referred to as an honor killing, and this bothered him. He cannot believe that a religion would allow someone to kill another human being. He would be in prison for 13 more years before dying on November 10, 2024, at 63 years of age. Fayleh al-Maliki's conviction and 34.5-year sentence brought legal justice, but it could not undo the loss of a vibrant young woman. Noor's story remains a poignant reminder of the cost of intolerance and the enduring fight for individual autonomy. Lauren and William Heaven adopted a newborn baby girl named Erin in the summer of 1994. From the start, Erin became a cherished member of the family, receiving the same love and care as their biological children. Over the years, she forged a strong bond with her foster sisters, creating a close-knit family that offered mutual support and encouragement. The Heaven family felt that Erin had something special and knew she was meant to be a part of their family. Growing up, Erin was shy and reserved, often struggling to connect with others. However, she found comfort in her passion for horses. From a young age, Erin developed a natural affinity for animals, and riding allowed her to express her true self. The East Tennessee Riding Club became a refuge for her, a place to escape life's pressures. At the riding club, Erin discovered a sense of belonging and friendship. The horses created a supportive environment where she could explore her feelings and build her inner strength. She spent countless hours in the stables, grooming and riding, finding peace in the equestrian lifestyle. Lauren had strict rules for her daughters, especially regarding dating. When Erin met Jonathan Corwin, she realized he was someone special, kind, respectful, and genuinely interested in her. Knowing her parents' strict guidelines, Erin hesitated to introduce Jonathan to the family. After careful thought, she decided to share her parents' expectations with him, knowing that their approval would be necessary if they were to pursue a relationship. Jonathan respected the importance of Erin's family values and took the initiative to ask Lauren and William for permission to date her. They were pleasantly surprised by his approach, appreciating his willingness to honor their expectations and recognize the significance of family. Over time, he became an important part of their lives, respecting their traditions and supporting them during tough times. He swiftly gained their trust and affection. As his relationship with Erin deepened, They officially became a couple, and it felt like he was more than just her boyfriend. He was now part of the family. Jonathan blended in well with the Heaven sisters, spending quality time with them and creating lasting memories. After graduating high school, he chose to enlist in the Marines out of a strong sense of duty. On Erin's 18th birthday, he surprised her with a proposal. Nervous but excited, he knelt down and posed the question he had been eager to ask. Erin's face lit up with joy as she eagerly exclaimed, "Yes." Lauren and William were thrilled for their daughter, confident in the strength of her relationship with Jonathan and believing he was the right choice for her. However, they were also aware of the sacrifices and challenges that come with being a military spouse. They worried about their daughter, knowing there would be times when she would be away from her family and that they would miss her deeply. Erin and Jonathan got married in Las Vegas after the Marine Corps Ball. After Jonathan finished basic training, he was stationed at the 29 Palms Marine Base in California. In 2013, while there, Erin and Jonathan learned they were expecting their first child. Sadly, just a few months later, they lost the baby. The news was devastating for both of them, particularly for Erin. During this difficult time, Jonathan did his best to support and comfort her. 4 months later, Erin took a pregnancy test and was overjoyed to find out it was positive. Eager to share the news, she decided to wait for her mother Lauren's visit to California in June, believing it would be more special to see her reaction in person. Along with announcing her pregnancy, Erin and Lauren planned to visit attractions in San Diego, such as SeaWorld and the zoo, looking forward to spending quality time together. They also intended to explore hiking trails in Joshua Tree National Park during Lauren's visit. Erin planned to go to the park on June 28th. Before leaving, she said goodbye to Jonathan, telling him that she loved him. Jonathan expected Erin to return by late afternoon, but as the hours passed without her home, he grew worried. He called her more than 50 times, but there was no response. The next morning, June 29th, Jonathan reached out to Lauren in Tennessee, explaining that Erin hadn't come home the previous day. Lauren was immediately concerned, especially given Erin's pregnancy and the heat. Lauren feared that Erin might be lost in the park and was worried about how much water she had with her. Jonathan then contacted the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department to report his wife as missing, providing details about Erin's last known location and asking for help in finding her. The detective assigned to the case considered the possibility that Erin had driven to Tennessee to see her mother, Lauren, but Lauren firmly rejected this idea, noting that Erin disliked driving and had a poor sense of direction. To search for Erin, Jonathan and his Marine friends went to Joshua Tree National Park, a vast 800,000-acre area of rugged desert terrain. This challenging environment, combined with the intense heat of late June, made the search even harder. As the detective looked into Erin's disappearance, he began to explore the state of Erin and Jonathan's marriage. Although they seemed like an ideal couple, he quickly found that things were not as they appeared. In reality, their marriage had been under strain since the loss of their baby. Erin's mental health had suffered greatly, leading her into a deep depression that impacted every aspect of her life, including her relationship with Jonathan. The investigation also revealed that they were dealing with financial difficulties. They were burdened by debt, which added to the tension in their marriage. Throughout the investigation, the detective discovered that Erin had formed a close friendship with Christopher and Nicole Lee. Christopher, like Jonathan, was a Marine, which created an initial bond. Additionally, Erin and Nicole shared a love for horses, bringing them even closer together. Nicole introduced Erin to White Rock Horse Rescue Ranch, about 45 minutes from their military base in 29 Palms. This ranch offered Erin a chance to escape her problems and find peace in a serene environment. As Erin's relationship with Jonathan worsened, she became increasingly attached to Christopher. The detective revealed that Christopher, having recently returned from Afghanistan, also faced personal struggles. Their shared experiences and emotional connections through their love of horses created a strong bond. Erin's affection for Christopher's 6-year-old daughter, Liberty, further deepened their relationship. She often babysat Liberty, providing a nurturing atmosphere that strengthened her ties to Christopher and her family. Erin and Christopher spent hours working together at the horse ranch, and initially, it seemed innocent. However, over time, they developed a romantic connection, which caught the attention of Nicole, Christopher's wife. She informed Jonathan, Aaron's husband, that she suspected an affair between Aaron and Christopher. Jonathan was devastated to hear that Aaron had been unfaithful. Despite this betrayal, he loved Aaron deeply and wanted to work on their marriage. Consequently, Aaron ended her relationship with Christopher and reconciled with Jonathan. However, a deeper investigation into Aaron's disappearance revealed a different story. Detectives found evidence that Aaron and Christopher were still involved romantically. This information came from Aaron's close friend, Jessica, who mentioned that on the day Aaron vanished, she had excitedly talked about a special trip with Christopher. Aaron hinted to Jessica that Christopher might propose, despite being married to Jonathan and pregnant with his child. The most shocking detail was when Jessica revealed that Aaron had doubts about who the biological father of her unborn baby was. This revelation broke Jonathan's heart, especially when detectives informed him that Aaron had planned to meet Christopher on the day she disappeared. The news left Jonathan feeling sad and anxious, as he was now considered a potential suspect in her disappearance. He firmly denied any involvement, maintaining his innocence. On June 28, the day Aaron went missing, a woman driving near the entrance to Joshua Tree Park noticed a car parked by the roadside. As she drove past, she saw that the car was still there. Suspicious, she took several photos of the vehicle to document potential evidence. 2 days later, on June 30th, another individual who also noticed the car parked there reported it to the police. When officers arrived, they found that the car was registered to Aaron. The woman who took photos of the car became an important witness in the case. She shared the images with detectives, hoping they could aid the investigation. The detectives focused on the location where Aaron's car was parked at the entrance to Joshua Tree Park. While examining the area, they found a set of shoe prints that formed the loop from the driver's side door to some visible tire tracks. This led them to believe that Aaron had parked her car and then got into another vehicle before she disappeared. Christopher, a person of interest, initially claimed he didn't know Aaron well. However, detectives were aware of their extramarital affair. When confronted about his statements, Christopher said he didn't see it as necessary to share details with the police, thinking it wasn't relevant. Eventually, he admitted to having a romantic relationship with Aaron. Despite his claims, the detectives were skeptical and informed him they had evidence showing Aaron went to Joshua Tree National Park to meet him on the day she disappeared. Christopher acknowledged that they had talked about running away together but insisted he was never serious, citing his love for his 6-year-old daughter, Liberty, and stating that he would never abandon her. Christopher initially denied inviting Aaron to the park with him, claiming that she had only overheard him discussing plans to visit the area. He tried to suggest that she had asked to go along. With no solid evidence against him, detectives bluffingly told him that the tire tracks found at the park matched his vehicle, suggesting he had met Aaron there. This made Christopher nervous, and he confessed that he might have entered the area where Aaron had parked her car, but he claimed he never saw her on the day she vanished. The detectives shifted their attention to the White Rock Horse Rescue Ranch, where Aaron often volunteered to care for horses. They interviewed the ranch owner, who revealed that on the day Aaron disappeared, Christopher's wife, Nicole, had sent a text stating that Christopher wouldn't be at work because he was sick. The following morning, when Christopher and Nicole returned to the ranch, they appeared tense as news of Aaron's disappearance spread. The owner also mentioned that Nicole believed Aaron was pretending to be missing to gain attention. During the investigation, detectives learned that Christopher and his family were planning to move back to Alaska soon, as he was nearing the end of his military service. The ranch owner had allowed Christopher and Nicole to borrow her SUV for transporting their belongings and permitted the detectives to search the vehicle. Inside the SUV, investigators found a potato launcher, which is considered an illegal weapon in California. This discovery led to Christopher's arrest, although he was released on bail on July 5, 2014. A week later, he was discharged from the Marines. Meanwhile, the search for Aaron continued in San Bernardino County. Aaron's husband, Jonathan, passed a polygraph test, indicating he was truthful and not a suspect. At this stage of the investigation, detectives believed that Christopher had lured Erin to Joshua Tree National Park, where he killed her and disposed of her body in one of the shafts. A breakthrough came when a friend who had accompanied Christopher on a scouting trip provided detectives with photographs from their outing. Using these photos, detectives engaged a cave expert to pinpoint where they were taken in the Mojave Desert. The expert identified the location as the Rose Peru mine. However, since there are multiple mines in the area, Erin's remains could be in any of them. Determined to find Erin, a large-scale search of the Rose Peru mine commenced, lasting several weeks as detectives meticulously searched the desert for clues. Despite their extensive efforts, the search did not yield any positive results. Throughout this process, the detectives remained hopeful for closure and justice for Erin. On August 14, 2014, while searching for a missing woman, a member of the San Bernardino Cave Rescue Team noticed a strong smell of gas coming from a mine. The team quickly sent someone down the mine's shaft to investigate. Inside, they found the human leg, prompting them to swiftly recover the body. Along with the body, they collected several pieces of evidence, including a makeshift torch made from a skirt, a propane tank, and a bottle of Sprite, which were important for the investigation. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy. The examination revealed that the remains were those of Erin Corwin. Further investigation showed that she had a garrote wire around her neck, indicating she had been strangled. A garrote is designed to restrict airflow by putting pressure on the throat or windpipe and usually consists of a handle and a flexible wire. Based on the evidence found at the scene, an arrest warrant was issued for Christopher Lee, charging him with first-degree murder in connection with Erin's disappearance and death. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified that Christopher had expressed interest in how to dispose of a body in the weeks before Erin went missing. Their testimonies bolstered the prosecution's case against him. One of his friends recalled seeing a white propane tank in his car that was similar to the one found with Erin's body. When asked about the propane tank, he allegedly stated that he planned to blow up a mine. A close friend of Erin testified that Erin was in love with Christopher and intended to leave her husband, Jonathan, for him. On the day Erin disappeared, she was excited about a special trip to Joshua Tree National Park with Christopher. During Christopher's trial, a DNA expert from the crime lab testified about evidence found at the scene. The expert revealed that the green t-shirt, which was used to make a homemade torch found near Erin's body in the mine, had Christopher's DNA on it. Additionally, DNA from both Erin and Christopher was found on a swab taken from the mouth of a Sprite bottle discovered beside Erin's body. The prosecution's theory in Erin's murder case was that Christopher took her to Joshua Tree National Park under the pretense of a romantic getaway but with harmful intentions. They claimed that Christopher met Erin at the park entrance and convinced her to get into his car. Instead of driving her to scenic spots or hiking trails, he allegedly took her to the Rose Peru mine. There, he is accused of strangling her with a garrote and then disposing of her body in the mine shaft. To eliminate any evidence linking him to the crime, he attempted to blow up the mine using a homemade torch made from his t-shirt and a propane tank. His goal was to destroy Erin's body and any evidence against him. However, for unknown reasons, he ultimately did not carry out the explosion. Christopher testified in his own defense, explaining to the jury that he had always intended to leave the United States Marine Corps by June 2014 to start a new chapter in his life. He also mentioned that he planned to break up with Erin and move to Alaska with his wife and daughter. On June 28, he had organized a hunting trip with Erin, hoping it would provide an opportunity for an open conversation. Christopher picked Erin up at the entrance of the park and drove her to the Rose Peru mine, a remote area known for its beauty. However, Erin expressed concerns about the location's safety and decided to stay in the car while Christopher unloaded his supplies. Once back at the car, where Erin was listening to music, they began to talk. Christopher told Erin about his plans to relocate to Alaska, and she expressed a desire to join him, emphasizing her wish to be part of his daughter's life. However, Christopher held a troubling perspective. He believed that his wife, Nicole, had discovered their daughter was being abused and that Erin was responsible. While sitting in the car near the mine, he confronted Erin about whether she had touched his daughter inappropriately. Aaron became visibly nervous and, while stuttering, admitted to the abuse, which deeply upset Christopher and made him determined to protect his daughter. Christopher admitted to the jury that learning of the abuse filled him with anger towards Aaron. Concerned for his daughter's safety, he left the truck to retrieve his garrote, intending to punish Aaron for her actions. He then strangled her to death and dragged her body into the mine shaft to ensure she would not be found. Christopher Lee was found guilty of Aaron Corwin's murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Aaron's husband, Jonathan Corwin, strongly denies Christopher's claim that Aaron abused Christopher and Nicole's daughter. The detectives and prosecutor involved in the case have expressed their disbelief and disgust at these allegations, asserting that anyone who knew Aaron would understand she was incapable of harming that child. On March 1, 2019, it was a chilly Friday evening in Harold Hill. Amy's Park, a popular local spot, was filled with the usual crowd of teenagers unwinding after a busy week. 17-year-old Jody Chesney, an energetic student, was at the center of it all. She sat with her boyfriend, Eddie Coyle, and a group of 5 friends on a picnic bench, enjoying their time together as laughter mixed with the sounds from a portable speaker. As the clock approached 9:25 p.m., the atmosphere in Amy's Park changed. Earlier, around 9 p.m., Jody's group had noticed 2 people hanging around, but they didn't think much of it since strangers often visit parks. The 2 left quietly and disappeared into the night. However, about 30 minutes later, they returned, but this time, they weren't just passing by. The 2 figures approached Jody's group deliberately, moving swiftly through the darkness. Without any warning or conversation, one of them suddenly attacked. Screams echoed through the air as Eddie caught her when she collapsed, leaving her friends in shock. Unfortunately, despite the paramedics' efforts, they couldn't save her. Metropolitan Police have sealed off the park and launched a murder investigation. Harold Hill was not known for such incidents. While London did face issues with knife crime, Amy's Park was considered a safe haven for children. Neighbors placed flowers and written tributes at the park's entrance. Purple ribbons, Jody's favorite color, were tied to fences. The police pledged to find answers, but time was of the essence. Each hour without a lead made the investigation more difficult. First, let's explore Jody's life. After her parents separated when Jody was 6, her father, Peter, became a devoted single parent to Jody and her older sister, Lucy. Their home was filled with love, despite the challenges they faced. Peter described Jody as an affectionate child who sought connection but was also quite shy. However, she gradually flourished, largely due to the support of a primary school teacher who helped her gain confidence. In 2012, when Jody was 10, Peter married Joanne, who willingly embraced her role as stepmother. Jody and Joanne developed a close bond that Jody treasured. Joanne noted that Jody longing for the maternal connection she missed, and together they worked to nurture that relationship. Jody's home was filled with laughter, thanks to her playful sense of humor. Joanne often referred to her as a wind-up toy because of her boundless energy that brightened their days. Jody's teenage years were largely shaped by her dedication to the Girl Scouts. She poured herself into the program, burning badges, hiking up mountains, and canoeing with her troop. In addition to her scouting achievements, she was a self-taught pianist who effortlessly played the piano. She was also just 3 weeks away from completing her Gold Duke of Edinburgh Award. At Havering's Sixth Form College, where she studied photography, psychology, and sociology, her principal praised her as an excellent, hard-working, and focused student. Jody aspired to work with animals or children and was determined to make a positive impact in the world. Her friends remembered her for her ability to make them laugh. Her sense of humor blossomed when she overcame her childhood shyness. Jody's relationship with her sister Lucy was incredibly strong. Even with 2 years between them, they shared everything: secrets, laughter, and aspirations. Lucy saw Jody as her other half, someone who always prioritized others' needs. Their home in Dagenham was a welcoming place for Jody's friends, who were drawn to her warmth. She had no enemies and had a special talent for making everyone feel included. Even her dog was part of her life. Jody enjoyed taking him for walks, which provided a sense of stability amid her busy schedule. On March 1, 2019, Jody's day began like any other. It was a Friday, and she woke up in her Dagenham home with her dad Peter, stepmom Joanne, and sister Lucy. Jody was excited not only for the weekend but also for her dad's upcoming birthday. She had been discussing gift ideas with Joanne, eager to find the perfect present to make Peter smile. At 8 a.m., she shared a heartfelt message on Instagram, "Happy birthday, Dad," accompanied by a heart emoji. This post would later deeply affect those who viewed it, gathering many comments following her death. Jody spent her morning at Havering Sixth Form College, where she was in her second year of A-levels. After her classes ended around 3 p.m., she left college with her backpack over one shoulder, looking forward to the weekend ahead. Back in Dagenham, Jody had one last thing to do before her evening plans. She took Dog, the family's Yorkshire Terrier, for a walk, a routine that she cherished. By 4:30 p.m., she was back home, catching up with Joanne and Peter, who were preparing to celebrate Peter's birthday. Jody mentioned that she would be spending time with friends later, which was a typical Friday night for her. Jody grabbed her jacket, said her goodbyes, and left around 5:30 p.m., promising to return later. She made her way to Romford railway station, a quick bus ride away, to meet her boyfriend, Eddie, and a group of friends. By 6:30 p.m., the group of 6 teens, including Eddie, had gathered and were animatedly discussing their plans for the evening. Their gathering was recorded by surveillance cameras. Romford was their usual hangout, a popular spot for East London teens, filled with shops and fast food restaurants. That night, however, they decided to go to Amy's Park in Harold Hill, about a mile from Havering College, another favorite spot for them. The park featured a playground in the center and benches where teens would gather after dark. By 7:30 p.m., they were settled on a picnic bench, playing music from a portable speaker, just the kind of relaxed night Jody enjoyed. They had a great time together. At around 9 p.m., Jody's group spotted 2 figures in the park. They didn't seem unusual since Amy's Park is a public area where people come and go. The 2 stayed for a short time but left without engaging with anyone, disappearing into the night. Jody and her friends paid them no mind, enjoying their music and conversation. However, at 9:20 p.m., the same 2 figures returned, this time moving with a noticeable intent. According to police reports from the Metropolitan Police, they approached Jody's group directly, cutting through the darkness. One figure was dressed in dark clothing, and his face was hidden. The other figure was less clear, appearing as a shadow beside him. Without warning, the first attacker stabbed Jody in the back with such force that the knife broke, causing a severe 7-inch wound that collapsed her lung. Chaos erupted in the park. Eddie's scream shattered the night, and her friends stood frozen in shock. Eddie caught her as she fell, holding her on the ground and desperately calling for help. The 2 attackers quickly disappeared into the darkness. In a panic, Eddie called emergency services, urgency in his voice as he pleaded for an ambulance. Nearby residents were alerted by the screams. A woman began CPR, not realizing that the broken knife was still lodged in Jody's back. A man in a van stopped to assist, applying his coat to the wound, while another friend to help stop the bleeding. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but Jody's injuries were severe. Despite their efforts, she was declared dead at 10:26 p.m., just over an hour after the attack. Amy's Park was turned into a crime scene, marked off by police tape as forensic teams searched for evidence. Jody's friends, still in shock, told the police there was no argument or warning, just a sudden, unprovoked attack. The Metropolitan Police's homicide and major crime team took control of the investigation, with Acting Detective Chief Superintendent promising to find those responsible. As the investigation progressed, detectives focused on Jody's last hours, using witness accounts and phone records to confirm her movements. A key moment in the case came when a local man contacted the police. He reported seeing 2 men run out of the park on the night of Jody's attack and get into a black Vauxhall Corsa before driving away quickly. The witness also mentioned that there was at least one other person in the car, the driver. CCTV footage played a crucial role in the investigation. The streets of Harold Hill, equipped with various cameras, provided a collection of unclear images. By March 2nd, Police had reviewed footage from St. Neots Road and nearby Retford Road, showing two males leaving Amy's Park around 9:25 p.m. One wore a dark jacket with a noticeable pattern, while the other wore a hoodie that covered his face. On March 3rd, the police arrested 20-year-old Manuel Petrovich. The black Vauxhall seen at the crime scene was registered to him. Petrovich denied being involved in Jody's murder, claiming that his car had been stolen during a robbery at knife point. However, he later acknowledged that he owned the Vauxhall and had a mobile phone he used for selling cannabis. He refused to identify anyone he was with that night because he was concerned for his own safety and his family's safety, stating that people had already come to his house looking for him. During further questioning, he described the events of the night Jody died but referred to the attackers as Man A and Man B out of fear. Petrovich explained that on March 1st, he was with a friend who received a call from Man A asking for a ride. They picked up Man A and another person, Man B, and drove to Harold Hill for Man A to collect some cannabis and money. According to him, Man A and Man B got out of the car at Harold Hill, leaving Petrovich and his friend inside. He said the two men were away for about 5 minutes and seemed calm when they returned, noting that there was nothing unusual about their behavior. He stated, "Nothing about them made me suspicious. I did not see either of them carrying anything. My friend and I were told that Man A was collecting money and banned substance." After dropping off the two men, Petrovich claimed that a black male threatened him with a knife and took his car keys. He said that the next day, he heard about a girl who was stabbed in Harold Hill and hoped it wasn't related to his earlier encounter with Man A and Man B. Detectives identified a second suspect, a 19-year-old known to frequent the Harold Hill drug scene, based on witness descriptions of a black male in his late teens. To keep him from knowing he was a suspect, police kept his name confidential, referring to him as Suspect A in initial reports. The investigation continued to grow. A woman in her 40s who lives across the street from Amy's Park reported seeing suspicious individuals coming and going for weeks, especially at night. She also noted a young teenager who resembled Suspect B, suggesting he was running errands for older men. These accounts indicate a possible connection to banned substance activity, as there is a known issue with cannabis in Harold Hill, often involving teens as runners. Detectives believe Jody's group may have been mistaken for rival banned substance dealers. Although Jody has a clean record and no known ties to banned substance, this complicates the investigation. By March 10th, 9 days after Jody's death, the police were making significant progress. Acting on a tip, officers from the Metropolitan Police's Homicide and Major Crime Command focused on a house on Rogers Road in Dagenham, connected to Aaron Isaacs' uncle. They believed Svensson, referred to as Man A, and Isaacs, known as Man B, were hiding there after the attack. At 7 p.m., armed officers surrounded the location, with body cameras recording. In a dramatic turn of events, 19-year-old Svensson Ong-Akwai tried to escape by climbing over a rear flat roof but fell through a conservatory, shattering glass everywhere. A policeman approached and handcuffed him. Svensson's phone had texts linking him to Petrovich and discussing business in Amy's Park. When officers searched his home, they found a jacket that matched one seen in CCTV footage, with traces of Jody's blood on it. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Aaron Isaacs attempted to escape through a window but was caught in the back garden, where he had discarded a rucksack containing a large knife, 2 toothbrushes, and hair mousse, an unusual combination that raised suspicion. The police didn't stop there. They also arrested a 16-year-old boy, a friend of Manuel Petrovich, whose name was withheld for legal reasons, on suspicion of involvement in the crime. The police were casting a wide net, recognizing that Harold Hill's banned substance scene involved numerous runners and dealers. By May, all 4 individuals were facing charges. Svensson and Aaron were charged with murder, while Petrovich and the 16-year-old were charged with murder and manslaughter. Svensson was born on March 29, 2000, grew up in Harold Hill, near Amy's Park. He was raised by his mother and has 4 sisters. His childhood was troubled, primarily due to his father. In 2017, Svensson was kicked out of his home for disrespectful behavior and subsequently lived in a social services hostel in Romford. He described himself as a boxer hoping to become a professional. However, Svensson has criminal convictions for possessing and supplying cannabis and other banned substances. Transporting banned substance between London and rural areas, a risky environment where violence was common. In 2018, he violated a 6-week suspended sentence related to handling stolen jewelry. During the interrogation, Svensson remained calm. He acknowledged being in Amy's park but insisted he was only there to pick up cannabis. He denied stabbing Jody and instead accused Aaron of being responsible for the attack. Aaron, born on January 27, 2002, faced many challenges from a young age. He lived in a flat with his mother and brother. His childhood was troubled. His mother dealt with mental health issues, and he had been in contact with children's services since he was 4 years old. Aaron's criminal record included offenses such as carrying a screwdriver, causing bodily harm, possessing cannabis, and stealing a vehicle. When he was detained, he was uncooperative, even throwing a rucksack that contained a knife during his arrest. During questioning, he claimed he was simply hanging out with Svensson and insisted he had no knowledge of the knife. He told the detectives that he didn't touch Jody's, blaming Svensson for the attack and saying he ran away out of fear. Manuel Petrovich, the suspected driver, is a 20-year-old local from Romford with connections to banned substance circles. Although not much is known about his background, he was considered a trusted associate of Svensson and frequently lent his car for various operations. In a leaked prison conversation that prosecutors received, Petrovich acknowledged that Svensson had been planning activities in Amy's park and mentioned that they had set him up a couple of months prior. He stated that he remained in the car and did not learn about the attack's outcome until later. Petrovich denied the murder charges, asserting that he was unaware Jody was the target and had no intention to cause harm. He explained that Jody's group was mistakenly identified as the intended targets, as they were in the same area. They went to confront their rivals but ended up attacking the wrong people, he told a friend, not realizing he was being recorded. Anticipating arrest, Svensson took extreme measures to hide his actions. He burned his clothes after the attack, except for his jacket. Aaron also disposed of his clothes, and both men fled to Dagenham in an attempt to escape the police. During their interrogations, they played a blame game, each pointing fingers at the other. Svensson claimed he was only a lookout, while Aaron argued he wasn't involved in the plan. However, the evidence against them grew: the blood-stained jacket, phone records indicating they had conspired together, and CCTV footage showing them at the crime scene. As the formal charges were laid out, the community in Harold Hill struggled to understand the senseless motives behind the crime. Jody, a Girl Scout who had no ties to banned substance, became an unwitting victim in a conflict she was unaware of. While the arrests brought some relief, they did not provide closure. Jody's family, especially her father Peter, wanted justice. Peter established the Jody Chesney Foundation, a charity aimed at diverting young people from knife crime. The foundation's website described Jody as a kind person who accepted everyone. Purple ribbons emerged as symbols of her memory, with vigils and scouting events celebrating her compassion. Jody's legacy reached beyond Harold Hill, igniting national discussions about knife crime. The foundation supported youth programs, and Peter advocated for stricter laws, although he told that no law will bring her back. The trial began on September 17, 2019, at the Old Bailey, one of London's most historic courts. 4 defendants stood accused: Svensson Onakwi, 19, Aaron Isaacs, 17, Manuel Petrovich, 20, and a 16-year-old boy, unnamed for legal reasons. The courtroom was heavy with emotion. Jody's family, including her dad, Peter, stepmom, Joanne, and sister, Lucy, attended nearly every day, wearing purple ribbons in her memory. The prosecutor asserting that all 4 defendants played a role in a brutal act of unprovoked violence linked to a turf war. He explained to the jurors that Jody was completely innocent and had been mistakenly identified as a rival by the assailants who normally visited Amy's park. He emphasized damaging evidence, including CCTV footage showing Petrovich's black Vauxhall Corsa near the park, a blood-stained jacket belonging to Svensson, and phone records that connected the group to a premeditated attack. He also referenced a conversation in prison where Petrovich admitted that Svensson intended to target rivals but ended up attacking the wrong people. The prosecutor claimed that Svensson was the person who stabbed Jody, with Aaron enthusiastically supporting him, while Petrovich and the 16-year-old boy assisted in the attack. This was not a spontaneous act, the prosecutor told, highlighting that the group intended to inflict serious harm, making them all responsible for murder under joint enterprise law. The defense teams actively sought to clear their clients of wrongdoing. Charles Sherrard, who represented Svensson, acknowledged that his client was present in the park but denied that he was the one who stabbed Jody. Sherrard pointed to Aaron as the real attacker and argued that Svensson's clothing, a white hoodie and gray tracksuit, did not match the description of a figure dressed in black provided by witnesses. Sarah Forshaw, who defended Petrovich, claimed her client was only a driver and unaware of any violent plans. If Petrovich had known what was going to happen, he would have turned off his phone like Svensson did, she asserted to the jurors. Natasha Wong, representing Aaron, contended that he was merely a runner without any intent to commit violence, denying that he carried a knife or was aware of Svensson's plans. Louise Sweet, who defended the 16-year-old, emphasized his lack of a violent history and urged jurors to view him as a bystander rather than an active participant. Each defense relied on the absence of direct evidence, such as DNA on the knife, in hopes of creating reasonable doubt. After 45 hours of testimony, which included Eddie Coyle's description of the attack and forensic evidence of an 18 centimeters deep wound, the jury deliberated for just over 5 hours. On November 7, 2019, they reached their decision. Svensson Ong-Akwai and Aaron Isaacs were found guilty of murder, while Manuel Petrovich and the 16-year-old were acquitted of all charges. Sentencing took place on November 18, where Judge Wendy Joseph condemned the pathetic location dispute that resulted in Jody's death. Svensson Ong-Akwai, identified as the one who stabbed Jody, received a life sentence with a minimum of 26 years, while Aaron Isaacs, his accomplice, received life with a minimum of 18 years. The courtroom was emotional as impact statements were read. While the verdict offered bittersweet relief to Jody's family, Peter, speaking outside the court, stated he was over the moon about the convictions but heartbroken over his loss. Jody's sister Lucy wrote in her statement, she was only 20 years old, and already she dreaded her life. Joanne believed that Petrovich, as the driver, should have faced consequences, but the family chose to focus on preserving Jody's memory. The Jody Chesney Foundation is actively working to make a difference. They hosted a fundraiser in 2024 that raised £10,000 for workshops aimed at preventing knife crime, as reported on their website. Jody Chesney's life, vibrant and full of promise, was tragically cut short on March 1, 2019, in a senseless act of violence that shook Harold Hill. The convictions of Svensson Ong-Akwai and Aaron Isaacs brought a measure of justice, but no verdict could heal the void left in the hearts of her family and community. Through the Jody Chesney Foundation, her father Peter channels grief into action, raising funds to combat knife crime. Purple ribbons, Jody's favorite color, continue to symbolize her compassion and the collective resolve to honor her memory. Her legacy endures, inspiring a national call to end the scourge of knife crime and ensure no other family endures such loss. Though Jody is gone, her light shines on in every step taken to make communities safer. Anna Nezovich, a U.S. citizen, had moved to Madrid after 13 years of marriage to take some time for herself and start anew. While in Madrid, she was involved in finalizing her divorce, making future plans, and keeping in touch with her family and friends. On February 2nd, Anna made her last known phone call. The very next day, messages began arriving from her phone, raising immediate concerns. One of her close friends quickly noticed that the texts did not sound like Anna. Anna was born in 1983 in Colombia to a family that valued traditional Balkan customs. Her upbringing emphasized the importance of family, discipline, and education. Growing up, she was known for her neatness, organizational abilities, and independence, traits that remained with her throughout her life. Later, Anna moved to the United States, became a U.S. citizen. Living in here opened up new career and personal growth opportunities for her. She became fluent in English, honed her professional skills, gradually became a part of her local community. Anna always prioritized education, self-improvement. She choosing to live a quiet and unassuming life away from the public eye. In the early 2000s, Anna met David Nezovich in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Their relationship progressed quickly. They then moved in together and got married. As their personal relationship grew, they became business partners as well, founding a company focused on tech support and IT solutions. David took care of the technical aspects of the business, while Anna managed organization and long-term strategy. Eventually, they began investing in real estate, acquiring properties throughout Florida. From the outside, their life together seemed stable. They had a thriving business, a home, and a comfortable lifestyle, giving the impression of a couple on the path to financial independence. However, underlying issues were developing. Friends and acquaintances were largely unaware of the growing problems in their marriage. Over time, serious conflicts arose, including financial disagreements and deeper personal issues. By 2023, Anna and David's marriage had deteriorated to a breaking point. Those close to them reported they were in the midst of a separation, with asset division becoming the main focus. This included both their tech business and several real estate properties. Although they had not yet finalized the divorce, both were already preparing for it. Negotiations had started, disagreements emerged, and tensions were rising. With the conflict escalating, Anna chose to temporarily leave the US. In December 2023, she moved to Madrid, renting an apartment in the upscale Salamanca neighborhood. She explained that this move was essential for distancing herself from the stress, gaining clarity, and closing a chapter in her life. She repeatedly stated that she wasn't seeking a new relationship or distractions. Her goal was simply to regain her balance. After settling in Spain, Anna made her new place feel like home, began therapy, maintained close contact with friends, and started planning short trips across Europe. Her time in Madrid wasn't an escape, it was a way to step back from the overwhelming conflict she faced in Florida. However, just a few weeks into this new life, an unexpected event brought her independent journey to a sudden and troubling end. After moving to Madrid, Anna maintained a close friendship with her longtime friend, Sana Remo, who was living in Florida. They talked every day, despite the time difference. Their friendship had a strong foundation, and they often traveled together. Anna trusted Sana completely, often sharing her thoughts, feelings, and daily experiences with her. Their text messages showed that Anna was open about her adjustment to life in Spain. In mid-January 2024, the two friends traveled to Austria together. After their trip, they made plans to meet again in Madrid, with Sana set to arrive on February 8th. Before that, Anna had arranged a short trip to Barcelona with another friend on February 5th. They had already booked their tickets for the trip, which was not just a vacation but also included attending a conference. Anna had discussed their plans and was excited about the upcoming journey. On the evening of February 2nd, Anna had a phone call with Sana around 8:30 p.m. local time. They spoke for over an hour. Anna mentioned that she planned to stay in that night and had no plans to go out. She appeared calm and talked about her day, sharing details about errands and household chores. Their conversation ended around 10 p.m., which is the last confirmed time anyone had contact with Anna. The next morning, February 3rd, Sana received a text from Anna's number. It said, "I met an amazing man. He has a summer house about 2 hours from Madrid. We're heading there. The signal might be weak. I'll call you when I return." Soon after, another message arrived. "After my therapy session yesterday, I took a walk. He approached me on the street, and we instantly connected. I've never felt like this before." Sana felt something was off about the messages. She knew Anna well. She was cautious and would never leave town with a stranger without informing someone. Sana responded immediately, but there were no further replies. Her calls also went unanswered. At first, she tried to convince herself that Anna might indeed be in a place with poor reception. However, her concern quickly escalated into alarm. That same day, another friend of Anna's received similar messages. The text felt strange. The wording was flat and lacked Anna's usual style. What struck her as odd was the dialect, which sounded very different from Anna's typical speech. They mentioned that the text seemed like it had been translated from another language using an automatic translator. The theory was logical. The message sounded awkward and overly formal, which made him uncomfortable. Both Sana and Anna's friend quickly figured out that Anna hadn't written those messages herself. They compared them to their previous conversations and immediately noticed the difference. Anna's actual texts were vibrant and filled with her distinctive expressions, none of which were present in these messages. Furthermore, the content of the messages didn't match her recent actions at all. The next day, Sana did everything she could to contact Anna. She reached out to their mutual friends, tried tracking her location using apps, and even called local hospitals. However, nothing worked. Although Anna's phone was on, she did not answer. After, Sana quickly contacted the Madrid police. She explained that Anna's sudden silence was very unusual and that the messages had a tone that Anna wouldn't normally use. However, the authorities did not act right away. They viewed Anna as an adult who had the right to make her own choices, including leaving town without notifying anyone. Officially, her disappearance was not deemed suspicious. Police stated they could not start an investigation without evidence that Anna was missing against her will. They believed the unusual texts and her lack of communication were insufficient. The only definitive point they recognized was February 5th, the day Anna was supposed to travel to Barcelona. Authorities indicated that if she did not arrive at the station or reach out by that date, her absence would be considered a formal missing persons case. As a result, no significant actions were taken for 3 days after Anna stopped responding. The police did not check her phone records, search her apartment, or look into her recent activities. After Anna went missing, her friends tried hard to find her. They called and texted her repeatedly and even contacted people in Madrid, but nothing worked. On February 5th, Anna was supposed to be at the train station but didn't show up, and none of her phones were answering. It was only then that authorities officially declared her a missing person. That same day, a request was made to the court for permission to search her apartment and access her phone records. However, the request was denied by a judge due to a lack of evidence suggesting any crime had occurred. There were no signs of forced entry, loud noises, or aggressive behavior. Therefore, there was no legal basis for allowing a search or accessing her private information. Days later, when law enforcement entered Anna's apartment, they found that the door was locked from the outside. Inside, everything looked untouched. Her belongings were in order, there were no signs of a struggle, and nothing valuable was missing. However, the fact that her home was undisturbed raised serious concerns about her disappearance. It indicated that she might have either left voluntarily and never returned or that someone took her out without breaking in. Anna's brother, Felipe Henao, kept in close contact with Spanish authorities but pointed out that coordinating internationally was difficult. He shared with reporters that the investigators in Madrid had limited English proficiency and that U.S. officials had not yet provided significant assistance. He expressed worry about the lack of communication among Spanish police, the FBI, and the U.S. consulate. Despite the disappearance of a U.S. citizen under mysterious circumstances abroad, the initial days following Anna's vanishing were poorly managed. This was a critical time when they could have gathered fresh evidence, interviewed neighbors, and reviewed phone activity or camera footage. Instead, valuable time was wasted, assuming Anna left on her own. This assumption delayed a prompt response and may have impacted the investigation's course. On the 4 days later after Anna Nezovic disappeared, staff at her apartment complex provided police with crucial information that changed the investigation. This information was about the night of February 2nd, which was the last time Anna had been in contact. A building administrator reported that several surveillance cameras at the entrance and along the building's facade had been disabled around 9:30 p.m., just 30 minutes before Anna stopped responding to her friend. When security personnel reviewed the recordings, they noticed that the camera lenses had been intentionally covered. The footage showed a person in dark clothing and a motorcycle helmet approaching the outdoor cameras. He spraying paint directly onto the lenses to obscure them. Afterward, he waited for someone to exit the building, which allowed him to slip inside. Once inside, he targeted the camera in the elevator area, spraying paint over its lens as well. This act appeared to be deliberate. The individual seemed to know where the surveillance devices were and how to disable them quickly, discreetly. The building staff confirmed that the security systems had been tampered with. They provided copies of the footage to Spanish investigators, which was the first visual evidence indicating possible outside interference. However, identifying the person in the video was impossible due to his helmet and dark clothing. The individual's face was completely covered, and their body type did not offer enough clues for clear identification. Nevertheless, forensic experts noted a few important details. The person's eyes, part of their forehead, and brow line were briefly visible. Investigators believe that this person planned the act meticulously. He brought spray paint and wore equipment intended to prevent leaving any traces behind. His appearance in the footage matched the timeline of Anna's disappearance, raising further suspicions. The targeting of the building's surveillance system and the disabling of specific cameras indicated that the individual was familiar with the layout of the premises, suggesting this was not a random act. It was planned and concerning. Further investigation showed that the exterior camera was spray painted in about 30 seconds, and the interior camera was disabled even more quickly. Every action taken was intentional and confident, with no sign of hesitation or looking around. This led investigators to conclude that the individual knew how long the actions would take and executed them with precision. A staff member confirmed that this man appeared on camera just as residents were leaving. He seized the opportunity to enter the building, indicating that he did not have authorized access. Without a key card or entry code, he was not recognized as a resident. He took a direct route from the entrance to the camera near the elevator, with no stops. The video footage quickly caught the attention of both law enforcement and Anna's friends. Sana, who had reached Madrid by that time, shared the video with journalists, which sparked public interest in the case. Media outlets began to speculate that the man in the helmet might be linked to Anna's disappearance, but his identity and motives remained unknown. After an image from the surveillance footage was made public, the FBI started its own analysis. They noted that even low-resolution footage could be analyzed to compare visual elements with their databases. They concentrated on key facial features that were still visible despite the helmet, such as the shape of the eyes, the space between the eyebrows, the brow ridges, and the upper facial structure. These aspects can often be recognized even when partially hidden. Public curiosity about the footage intensified when it was revealed that the paint used to disable the cameras was from a specific brand, which later appeared in other parts of the investigation. Investigators did not release this detail right away, but they found that the spray can involve match the type and packaging shown in a store surveillance footage. This footage captured a man who looked similar to someone seen at Anna's building buying the same spray can. After Anna stopped answering calls and messages, her friend Sana reached out to her husband, David Nezovich, on February 4th. During their conversation, Sana learned that David was in Florida. She proposed that they travel to Madrid together to help search for Anna, and David agreed, even discussing a specific flight from Miami for the next day. However, when the time arrived, he did not show up and later claimed to be in Serbia. This unexpected turn left Anna's friends confused. David was aware that his wife had gone missing under mysterious circumstances in a foreign country. He had the ability to fly to Spain, yet he chose to go to Serbia instead. This decision was puzzling. Instead of participating in the search, he went to a third country where his relatives live. Questions naturally arose. Why didn't he go to the location where his wife disappeared? Why didn't he join the search effort? Sana grew increasingly concerned about David's behavior. While he did not openly dismiss her, his reactions felt distant and confusing. His actions seemed illogical. Although the first few days were critical, he did not attempt to go to Madrid. He believed there was nothing he could do in Spain because he did not speak Spanish, had no place to stay, and was unfamiliar with the city. His lawyer supported this view, explaining to reporters that going to a country without any local connections would not be useful. He also mentioned that David was worried about Anna's disappearance but felt that being there in person would not make a difference. After Anna went missing, David hired a lawyer in Florida. The lawyer reported that David had been in contact with the FBI and had shared all necessary information, including credit card statements and his efforts to find legal assistance in Spain. However, none of these actions involved him participating in the search directly. Despite providing some information, David stayed distant and avoided making any public comments. After Florida police confirmed that David reported a theft in January, several questions emerged. He alleged that $5,000 in cash and personal items were stolen from his unlocked car. In the morning, he found the passenger doors slightly open. Security cameras near his home did not capture the theft, and the police could not identify any suspects. Although there was no initial connection to Anna's case, the report became suspicious in light of subsequent events. David's trip to Serbia created further controversy. He asserted that he left the U.S. before Anna's disappearance and remained abroad during that time. However, Saw mentioned a phone call with him on February 4th, in which he stated he was in Florida, suggesting he might have flown to Serbia after that conversation. There was no official confirmation from border control authorities at that time. David's attorney provided his passport as evidence that he had left earlier, but these inconsistencies raised doubts and increased suspicion regarding his involvement. The situation became more complicated due to a property dispute that had intensified months before Anna disappeared. With shared assets about to be divided, suspicion was understandable. This divorce was not just ordinary, it involved significant financial stakes and joint possessions. Anna's friends noted that their relationship had turned hostile. In contrast, David and his lawyer claimed the divorce was amicable, arguing that they had simply grown apart. At that time, David had not been charged with any crime and was located outside the U.S. However, his absence during the search for Anna and inconsistencies in his statements raised concerns among investigators. While David insisted he had no involvement in Anna's disappearance, a growing list of circumstantial evidence caught the attention of both police and the FBI. In May 2024, U.S. authorities arrested David at Miami International Airport, just after he arrived on an international flight. He was taken into custody by the Diplomatic Security Service and the FBI without any issues. This was the first official action that connected him to Anna's disappearance. He faced charges related to the abduction of a U.S. citizen outside the country, based on a series of indirect but related pieces of evidence uncovered during a multinational investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence was surveillance footage collected by investigators in Spain and Serbia. At a store close to Anna's apartment in Madrid, cameras captured a man who looked like David buying a can of spray paint and duct tape. Forensic analysis showed that the spray paint was the same brand used to disable the security cameras in Anna's building, as the label and color were identical. Investigators viewed this as evidence of premeditation. Additionally, authorities tracked a rental car used by David in Serbia. GPS data indicated that the car entered Spain, traveled through Madrid, and then moved into northern Italy before returning to Serbia. The precise tracking of this route led investigators to believe that Anna's body may have been transported in that vehicle. A stop in a wooded area of northern Italy raised particular interest, prompting coordinated searches by both Italian and Spanish law enforcement. As of that time, no remains had been discovered, but the theory that Anna's body was transported remained a central focus of the investigation. A key piece of evidence came from surveillance footage in Anna's apartment building. Investigators released a video showing a man, matching David's physical description, exiting the elevator with a large suitcase on the same night Anna disappeared. Though his face was obscured, the timing and situation aligned with other findings in the investigation. Authorities suspected that the suitcase might have been used to remove Anna's body from the apartment. David's rental car, which he had picked up in Serbia, was eventually returned to the rental agency. An inspection revealed that the car's mileage had increased by over 4,800 miles. Additionally, it had been modified with tinted windows, which were not part of the original rental terms. These changes raised suspicions. Investigators also found that the car was operating with false license plates during a time it was believed to have been used for cross-border travel. Spanish police recorded a sighting of a similar vehicle near the location where Anna disappeared, but they could not identify the driver because of the tinted windows and fake plates. The FBI linked several crucial pieces of evidence: the purchase of materials, disruptions to surveillance systems, the travel route, elevator footage showing a suitcase, and modifications to a car. Their report indicated that all the evidence suggested a planned criminal act and an effort to conceal it. The official statement referred to the case as the abduction of a U.S. citizen abroad, involving a U.S. national. Although no body was found, authorities believed the evidence was strong enough to justify an arrest. David was taken to a federal detention center in South Florida. His lawyers claimed he had cooperated with authorities, willingly shared information, and did not plan to escape. However, prosecutors contended that the substantial circumstantial evidence and the case's context created a significant risk that he might flee. David's arrest was a pivotal moment in the investigation. Until then, he had evaded authorities and avoided speaking publicly. Now, he was the focus of a federal case. The next step was to decide if he would remain in custody until the trial. After his arrest in Miami, David's first court appearance centered on his request for bail. The judge denied the request, citing a high risk of flight, and noted that the actions surrounding Anna's disappearance seemed well-planned and executed. The judge highlighted the planning and sophistication as reasons for keeping David in detention. David's legal team appealed the decision, arguing that he posed no danger and did not intend to flee. They proposed a substantial bail amount, an ankle monitor, a travel ban, and home confinement. The defense emphasized David's long-term residence in the U.S., his clean record, and his willingness to cooperate with authorities. However, the court stood. The defense's main argument was that David could not have been in Spain when Anna disappeared. His lawyer presented passport stamps and travel records to show he arrived in Serbia well before February 2nd, claiming that David physically could not have been in Madrid at the time of the incident. The lawyer also noted that David did not speak Spanish, had no ties or residence in Spain, which would have made it difficult for him to plan such an act. Prosecutors were firmly opposed to the defense's claims. They pointed out that David's travels across Europe closely matched the timeline of Anna's disappearance. The evidence included the rental car's route, purchases of specific items, and other activities that suggested he had premeditated the act. Although there was no direct evidence, the prosecution insisted that the strong circumstantial evidence pointed to his involvement. To bolster their case, they presented the court with message transcripts, surveillance footage, phone records, and an analysis of David's behavior. It was argued that some of David's actions could not be mere coincidences. The judge acknowledged that the prosecution had built a substantial body of circumstantial evidence that created a convincing narrative. Although Anna's body had not been found, the evidence indicated that her disappearance involved aggressive intent and likely implicated David specifically. The judge addressed the defense's claim that the evidence was inadequate by clarifying that the requirement for bail is not beyond a reasonable doubt, but preponderance of the evidence. This means the court does not need absolute proof of guilt, only a significant likelihood of risk, like the chance of fleeing or obstructing the investigation. Therefore, the court chose to keep David in custody. His legal team announced they would appeal the bail denial and have filed a formal complaint with the district court, which can review the decisions of lower courts. As the main trial was approaching, David stayed in federal custody. The trial was expected to be lengthy, including expert testimony and international collaboration, and was likely to receive significant media coverage. Investigators began focusing on a woman, identified by the FBI, who might have helped create the suspicious text messages that seemed to come from Anna on February 3rd. This woman, fluent in Spanish, had previously interacted with David via a dating app. The texts sent from Anna's phone were in Spanish and did not match her usual writing style. As mentioned earlier, her close friends quickly noticed that the phrasing resembled a machine translation, a viewpoint later confirmed by linguistic forensic analysis. The defense maintained that there was no direct evidence linking David to the crime. His attorneys highlighted that no one had seen him at Anna's apartment, and there was no evidence of contact between them on the day she went missing. They also questioned the reliability of surveillance footage that showed a man with a suitcase, arguing that it could depict someone else, as the resemblance was not conclusive. Additionally, they emphasized that there had been no official confirmation of Anna's death through forensic evidence. On April 28, 2025, it was reported that David Nezovich, who had been charged with the abduction and presumed death of his wife, Anna, was found dead in his cell at a federal detention center in Miami. His attorneys stated that he took his own life, and no suicide note was discovered. At the time of his death, he had been held without bail while awaiting trial. Anna's family expressed deep sadness and frustration over the situation. Since the trial did not take place, Anna's whereabouts remain unknown. Her loved ones believe that David took the answers about what really happened on the night she disappeared with him. On November 23, 2013, in Santa Cruz Harbor, California, Forrest Hayes, a prominent figure in the tech industry, was found dead. His body was located on his luxury yacht, the Escape, which he owned. He was discovered unconscious in one of the cabins, and attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. Local law enforcement responded after the yacht's captain called for help. The circumstances surrounding Forrest's death were puzzling. He was lying on his back with no signs of struggle. An injection mark was visible on his arm, but no syringe or medical supplies were found nearby, raising questions about whether his death was accidental or intentional. The cabin appeared disordered. There were 2 wine glasses on a small table, one with lipstick marks, indicating he had company. All the windows were covered with curtains, and the lighting was dim, contributing to an atmosphere of privacy. The scene looked strangely staged, yet there were no clear signs of violence. The yacht's captain told the police that Forrest often used the boat for private outings. He noted that Forrest liked spending time alone on the yacht, but he also had guests from time to time. The coroner's initial assessment indicated that an overdose could be the cause of death. However, at the start of the investigation, it was unclear if this overdose was by accident or on purpose. The lack of a syringe near the body raised further questions. To find answers, investigators began looking into Forrest's life, including his contacts, business dealings, personal relationships, and the events leading up to his death. The main question in the investigation was, who was with Forrest in the last hours of his life? The presence of a wine glass with lipstick suggested that a woman might have been involved. However, neither the captain nor the harbor staff saw anyone exit after Forrest boarded the yacht. The investigation began by examining Forrest's phone, which was found near his body. An initial review of his apps and messages did not show anything suspicious, but detectives chose to look deeper into his personal life. As they explored Forrest's connections and habits, it became clear that his seemingly perfect life could be hiding unexpected secrets. Uncovering these secrets became a key goal for law enforcement as they sought to understand what happened aboard the Escape that tragic evening. Forrest Hayes was born on May 10, 1962, in Dearborn, Michigan. From a young age, he showed exceptional learning abilities. His curiosity, problem-solving skills, and natural charisma made him a leader among his peers. Teachers and classmates often praised his dynamic personality and commitment to excellence, which set the stage for his future success. After graduating from high school, Forrest attended a prestigious university where he studied engineering and computer science. He quickly mastered the latest technologies and began developing his own projects, which caught the attention of major tech companies. His career took off in the early 1980s, during the early growth of the information technology industry. A key moment in Forrest's career occurred when he joined Apple in 2005. At that time, Apple was rapidly expanding and working on innovative products like the iPhone and iPad. Forrest took a position in a crucial department focused on developing new technologies. His contributions to Apple's projects were so impactful that he quickly gained the respect of both his colleagues and the leadership team. Forrest was not just a skilled professional, he was also an innovator with a unique ability to find unconventional solutions to challenging problems, making him an invaluable team member. Colleagues remembered Forrest's unwavering determination to implement innovative ideas that improved the functionality and accessibility of Apple's products. During his time at Apple, he worked on technologies that later became industry standards. However, he didn't rest on his successes and soon accepted a position at Google, joining the company in 2007. At Google, he became part of Google X, a division focused on developing advanced technologies. His role involved overseeing projects related to autonomous vehicles, smart devices, and other innovative advancements. Notably, he contributed to the creation of self-driving vehicle systems, a significant breakthrough in autonomous transportation. Colleagues described Forrest Hayes as an inspiring leader who motivated his team to reach ambitious goals. He was strict but fair, promoting a positive work environment. Forrest embraced challenging tasks, which earned him the respect and admiration of his colleagues. His ability to blend strategic thinking with attention to detail enabled him to successfully lead large-scale projects that shaped the future of technology. Forrest's professional success was closely connected to his family life. In 1996, he married Denise Hayes. Together they built a strong relationship based on understanding and support. They had 5 children: Lauren, Danielle, Lily, Roscoe, and Zosia. Forrest was not only a successful businessman but also a dedicated father. Even with a busy work schedule, he always prioritized his family. Those who knew him said he loved spending time with his children, planning family trips, and creating traditions that brought them closer. Their family life seemed joyful. They living in a $4 million home in one of California's finest neighborhoods, which offered a peaceful and comfortable environment. Forrest's biggest joy came from outings on his yacht, the Escape. To him, the yacht represented family togetherness. He regularly took his family on short trips, enjoying quality time and relaxation away from the busy city life. Friends and colleagues admired how he balanced his career success with his family commitments. He exemplified the ability to manage both professional achievements and personal responsibilities. Although Forrest appeared outwardly harmonious, he sometimes shared with close friends that he felt empty inside. He had accomplished everything he had ever dreamed of, yet it didn't fully satisfy him. This sense of restlessness may have pushed him to pursue new experiences and interests, ultimately resulting in tragic outcomes. A key part of Forrest's secret life was his use of the app Seeking Arrangement. This platform connects wealthy individuals with younger partners for informal relationships that often involve financial support. Forrest actively used the app, and an investigation into his account showed that he had been messaging many women, setting up meetings, and negotiating the terms of their interactions. His relationships were not just casual. Forrest was known for generously supporting his partners by covering their expenses, giving them expensive gifts, and meeting in private settings. One such location was his yacht, which originally served as a family vessel for short trips but later became a personal getaway for him and the women he met through the app. The yacht offered the privacy, allowing him to avoid unwanted attention. The captain of the yacht, employed by Forrest, later informed the police that it was frequently used for these meetings. He recalled that Forrest sometimes took women on short trips or spent several hours alone with them on board. The captain noted that these encounters happened often but were covered by a confidentiality agreement. Alcohol was typically involved, and in some cases, illegal substances were also present. Messages found on Forrest's phone showed he discussed acquiring these substances, and occasionally, his partners would bring them at his request. This information shocked his colleagues and family, who were completely unaware of his secret life. Investigators paid special attention to a woman Forrest had met through Seeking Arrangement. A week before his death, he arranged to meet her on his yacht, where they spent the evening drinking wine and using substances that made Forrest feel unwell. In messages after their meeting, Forrest acknowledged he wasn't feeling well but expressed no desire to stop these activities. Forrest lived 2 distinct lives. In one, he was a dedicated husband, father, and respected professional. In the other, he sought excitement and a break from his daily routine. His colleagues and friends were unaware of this hidden side of him, and his family believed his yacht trips were simply a way for him to manage stress. These private meetings, which Forrest viewed as a release from his demanding job, ultimately had tragic consequences. The yacht, once a symbol of his achievement and independence, became the place where his 2 lives intersected, leading to his untimely death. This situation forced both investigators and Forrest's loved ones to reevaluate their perception of a man they had believed was perfect. Alex Tichelman was born on April 8, 1987, in Canada. Her biological parents are unknown because she was adopted by Leslie Ann and Bart Tichelman at a young age. They provided her with a stable and loving home, along with financial security. Leslie Ann worked in retail, while Bart held an executive position at a major company, which gave the family a respected social status. Alex grew up in a joyful environment. She thrived in school, particularly in literature, and aspired to become a writer. Her teachers appreciate her creativity and imagination. Besides her academic success, she enjoyed sports and actively participated in school competitions. Her parents were proud of her accomplishments, invested in her education, and supported her dreams. During her adolescence, Alex started experiencing a range of problems. At 14, she randomly tried cannabis, which led her to gradually engage in more risky behaviors. Initially, she experimented with lighter substances, but by 16, she had begun using harder drugs. This shift had a significant impact on her life. She began to skip school, quit sports, and distance herself from her parents. Leslie Ann and Bart worked hard to support their daughter. They consulted psychologists and took her to counseling, but things only got worse. In a last-ditch effort to help her, they sent Alex to a private rehabilitation school in Maine that had a strict approach for dealing with troubled teens. They hoped that being away from her usual surroundings would help her get back on track. Unfortunately, her time at the school did not yield the desired results. Alex struggled to adjust and soon returned home, where she reverted to her old habits. By the age of 18, Alex had left school. She explored different career paths, including journalism, but quickly lost interest. Her progress was repeatedly hindered by her battles with substance abuse. This addiction made it difficult for her to build a personal or professional life. In 2010, Alex moved to San Francisco, hoping to start fresh in the entertainment industry. She created a YouTube channel to share makeup tutorials and her daily life, but the project did not succeed, leading to more disappointment. In search of a way to distinguish herself, she ventured into modeling. However, she found that the conventional modeling standards did not fit her, so she decided to focus on fetish photography. She took part in BDSM-style photo shoots that emphasized shock and provocation. While this choice helped her connect with an audience, it did not provide her with financial stability. Alex continued to struggle with her addictions, living from one job to another and facing ongoing challenges. In 2011, Alex started using the Seeking Arrangement platform to connect with wealthy partners who could offer her financial support and a more luxurious lifestyle. Through this platform, she met Forrest Hayes. Their relationship began with typical discussions about the terms of their meetings. Forrest was looking for a companion for private gatherings on his yacht, Escape. He offered financial assistance and generous gifts in return. For Alex, this was a chance to gain the stability she needed. Initially, their meetings were casual and included wine and light conversation. However, things changed when investigators found out that Forrest sometimes asked Alex to bring illegal substances to their meetings, promising her extra money for doing so. Alex saw this as a way to earn more, and as a result, their meetings became more frequent, primarily taking place on the yacht Escape. One important person in Alex Tichelman's life was Dean Riopelli, the owner of popular nightclubs in Atlanta. Their relationship began in 2011, quickly drew attention because of their significant age difference. Dean was 51, while Alex was just 24. Despite this gap, they were both fully engaged in a lively and intense lifestyle. Dean was not only a successful entrepreneur but also a dedicated rock musician. His clubs played a key role in Atlanta's music scene. His band frequently performed there. Known for his charm, energy, and love for a free-spirited lifestyle, Dean became a major influence in Alex's life, who was seeking both stability and affirmation. Their relationship was filled with the wild excitement typical of rock and roll, including party. However, beneath this glamorous exterior, there were significant conflicts. Dean's friends and colleagues observed that Alex often triggered arguments. Her impulsive behavior, worsened by alcohol and substance use, made their relationship unstable. In September 2013, just weeks before the unfortunate incident involving Forrest Hayes, Alex reported Dean to the police, claiming he was aggressive. However, when the officers arrived, they discovered a different story. Witnesses stated that Alex was acting erratically that night. She had drunk too much alcohol, created a disturbance at a club, and even attacked Dean, including biting his finger and leaving marks. Consequently, Alex was charged with filing a false report and assault. This situation illustrated the ongoing tension in their relationship, which, despite hints of affection, was deteriorating due to persistent conflicts. A few weeks later, on September 24, 2013, Dean was found unconscious in his home. Alex called emergency services, stating that he had collapsed after a long night of partying. She said she had briefly gone to the bathroom. When she returned, she found him on the floor. Paramedics arrived and declared him dead at the scene. An autopsy indicated that the cause of death was a heart attack related to an overdose of illegal substances. However, this finding raised doubts among Dean's friends and family, who insisted that he strongly opposed banned substance use and avoided even basic painkillers. Their belief made the official death ruling seem inconsistent. Despite their concerns, the case was closed due to lack of evidence of foul play. Dean's death, initially deemed accidental, came back into the spotlight in 2014 when Alex was arrested in connection with the case of Forrest Hayes. During the investigation, police found similarities between the two cases. The substances linked to Forrest's death were the same as those found in Dean's system. This discovery led to the reopening of Dean's case. Additionally, Alex's mysterious social media posts heightened suspicions. Dean's family supported the reopening of the case, arguing that the original investigation was too superficial. They believed Alex's involvement with illegal substances indicated that she might have played a role in Dean's death, but no solid evidence was ever found to connect her directly to the incident. Despite the renewed investigation, Dean's case remains officially closed, and Alex's suspected involvement has never been proven. This uncertainty continues to leave unanswered questions. Investigators were able to piece together the events from the night Forrest was found dead using evidence, witness statements, and video footage from cameras on the yacht. On November 22, 2013, Forrest arrived at the yacht named Escape in the afternoon, as was his usual routine, and boarded by himself. Soon after, Alex joined him on the yacht. According to the captain, Forrest had asked the crew to leave for the evening because he wanted privacy and a relaxing night. The functioning cameras on the yacht captured footage of Forrest and Alex in the main cabin, where they were talking, laughing, and drinking wine. Alex brought a bag, which was later found to contain banned substance and syringes. As the night went on, their conversation became more informal, and Alex took out a syringe filled with a substance. She injected herself first and then offered it to Forrest, who accepted. The camera recorded the moment she injected him. Shortly after being injected, Forrest's health quickly worsened. He lost consciousness and collapsed on the couch. At first, Alex did not realize the seriousness of the situation. She kept drinking her wine and looking around the cabin. Eventually, she tried to wake Forrest by shaking him, but he did not respond. Frightened when she realized he was not waking up, Alex began to panic. She hurriedly packed her belongings, including the syringes and leftover drugs, in an effort to eliminate potential evidence. She also wiped the wine glass she had used to remove her lipstick marks, although she missed some of them. The video showed her quickly drawing the cabin curtains, checking the area to ensure no clear evidence of her was left. Afterward, Alex left the yacht without informing anyone of what had occurred, leaving Forrest unconscious on the couch. For several hours, no one checked on him. It was only later, when Forrest's worried wife reached out to the captain, that he returned to the yacht and found Forrest's lifeless body. The investigation found that Alex attempted to go into hiding after the incident. She turned off her phone and left the marina to avoid being found. However, video footage from the yacht, lipstick marks on a wine glass, fingerprints, and text messages exchanged between Forrest and Alex on his phone helped investigators reconstruct what happened. Alex's behavior on the yacht suggested she played a significant role in the tragedy. A critical question still lingered: was the injection intentional, or was it a reckless choice? Once Alex was identified as a main suspect in Forrest Hayes' death, law enforcement initiated a manhunt to find her. After the incident, Alex disappeared, which further fueled suspicions about her involvement. With her phone off and her previously active social media account silent, tracking her became increasingly difficult. Investigators developed a strategy to track down Alex using her profile on Seeking Arrangement. This app became crucial for locating her. They created a fake profile of a wealthy man looking for new companions. Despite trying to stay low-key, Alex couldn't resist the promise of financial benefit and agreed to a meeting. After several days of communication, she set up a rendezvous at a quiet location in California. When Alex arrived, she was arrested by law enforcement. The operation went smoothly. She did not resist arrest, though her demeanor was described as calm and indifferent. During the arrest, she claimed not to understand the charges against her, but she was soon formally charged with second-degree manslaughter, evidence tampering, and illegal distribution of controlled substances. The trial began in early 2014 and quickly attracted media attention because of Alex's appearance and controversial background. She became known as the beauty-turned-criminal. Her photos, past interviews, and courtroom behavior were frequently discussed. Alex maintained a calm and confident demeanor, often dressing stylishly, which elicited mixed reactions from the public. The prosecution argued that Alex was fully aware of the risks involved in her actions. They presented video evidence from the yacht showing her giving an injection to Forrest and then leaving without helping him. They claimed this showed her indifference and attempts to avoid responsibility. In contrast, Alex's defense team argued that she acted at Forrest's request, did not intend to cause harm. They maintained that his death was a tragic accident and that she left in a panic. They also pointed out that Forrest had requested the substances and consented to the injection. Public opinion was sharply divided. Some viewed Alex as a heartless criminal responsible for the death of a successful and respected man, while others saw her as a victim of circumstance, questioning the ethics of Forrest's actions, including his use of a dating app and engagement in risky behavior. In May 2015, Alex reached a plea deal with the prosecution. She admitted to involuntary manslaughter and possession of illegal substances in exchange for a shorter sentence and the chance to avoid a jury trial. Alex was sentenced to 6 years in prison, with credit for the time she had already spent incarcerated. This decision led to a renewed debate. Some people thought the sentence was too light given the situation, while others believed it was appropriate because there was no solid proof of intent to harm. After completing her sentence, Alex was deported to Canada, her birthplace, in 2017. Despite this, her name continued to appear in discussions and articles about high-profile crimes. To the public, Forrest became a representation of double lives, risky choices, and the significant consequences of reckless decisions that resulted in a tragedy affecting many people. After her release, Alex tried to rebuild her life. For a while, she stayed away from the public, avoiding media interviews and social media. A year later, she did her first major interview with a Canadian journalist through video call. In the interview, Alex appeared calm and composed, but many perceived her as emotionally detached. Her account of the events reignited controversy, sparked new discussions about her actions and their aftermath. She stated that she never meant to harm Forrest Hayes and was shocked by his death. Alex claimed that she had given him the injection at his request, insisted that she was unaware of any existing health problems he might have had. She believed that Forrest was aware of his limits, was in control of his actions. Additionally, she denied trying to hide evidence, explaining that her actions were the result of panic and poor judgment in the moment. Her statements contradicted the evidence in the case. Footage from the yacht showed Alex not only cleaning up evidence of her presence but also leaving without trying to get help. This raised further doubts about her honesty, drew sharp criticism from Forrest's family, who accused her of trying to deflect blame. Her comments about Dean Riopelli were equally controversial. In the interview, Alex described their relationship as troubled yet real, claiming she was devastated by his death. However, she avoided questions about the cause of Dean's overdose and the details of their last meeting. Her lack of response only increased suspicions among Dean's family, who had earlier called for the case to be reopened, stating that Alex's statements generated more questions than answers. The investigation into Dean Riopelli's death remains unresolved. In 2018, the Fulton County District Attorney's Office stated that the case was under review, but there have been no updates since then. Reports suggest that investigators did not find any new evidence to confirm or deny Alex's involvement, leaving Dean's family uncertain. Currently, Alex Tichelman lives in Canada and maintains a mostly private life. Her social media accounts are inactive, and journalists have had little success reaching her for comments. Some view Alex as a victim of unfortunate circumstances, while others regard her as cold and calculating, believing her actions contributed to two tragedies. The deaths of Forrest Hayes and Dean Riopelli raise many questions. Were they really accidental? What was Alex Tichelman's involvement in these tragic situations? Joanna Simpson was born in 1964. Her wealthy family lived in York, Yorkshire, UK, where she spent most of her childhood. Joanna attended an all-girls primary school and completed several grades before her family decided to move. The Simpsons relocated to Laxey on the Isle of Man after her father sold his construction company. After finishing local school, Joanna went to Oxford High School and then pursued business studies at Bath University. She was quite popular among her peers, was known as a well-mannered, kind, and optimistic girl. She willingly supported everyone she communicated with, which attracted people to her. Fellow students always crowded around her, eager to spend time together. Naturally, there were always young people in this group who were looking for her attention. Despite this, Joanna was more focused on her work and career. She wanted to establish herself before starting a family. She decided to get married in 1994 when she turned 30. Her husband also came from a wealthy family. Together, they bought a large house in Ascot, which was in a derelict state and required significant repairs. At that time, they did not have children, so the choice of such a large house seemed excessive to some. They lived there alone, not far from Windsor, where the royal family's castle was located. Additionally, Legoland was nearby, making this location appear to be a great option for expanding the family. However, Joanna was in no hurry to do so. She planned to convert part of the house into a guest house so that relatives and friends could visit often. Her husband supported her aspirations, but perhaps he wanted to have children. After 3 years of marriage, her husband decided to end their relationship. It seemed that this decision stemmed from his disappointment over not having children. Joanna was shocked by this decision. Her friends noticed how depressed she had become and wanted to help her. One of her close friends was a senior flight attendant and had a flight planned to South Africa. She invited Joanna to accompany her, hoping that a change of scenery would help Joanna regain her spirits. Joanna agreed. As it turned out, this decision was fateful. During the flight, she met a man named Robert Brown, who was the pilot of the British Airways airline on which she was traveling. Robert was an avid runner. He had been a British cross-country champion 3 times, which he was very proud of. It seemed they had a lot in common, and an affair began. Joanna retained ownership of the house after her first marriage, as she had invested most of the money into it. She and her new lover moved in together in September 1998. They began to think about marriage. By Christmas, Robert proposed. When everything happened so quickly, Joanna was usually more cautious, but not this time. After getting engaged, they married in February 1999. This rush surprised many, including Joanna's parents, who had only seen Robert a few times by that point. They did not have a good impression of him, believing he was too arrogant and unable to offer their daughter the love she deserved. However, it was futile to dissuade Joanna. She was independent and old enough to make her own decisions. The only thing her parents could do was encourage her to draft a prenuptial agreement before the wedding. The Simpsons believed this relationship might end quickly and did not want their daughter to worry about a potential divorce or risk losing part of her property. The newlyweds did not want to attract too much attention or organize an overly lavish ceremony. Afterward, they immediately traveled to South Africa, the country where they had first met. Joanna hoped to have an unforgettable honeymoon, but within the first few days of the trip, she began to doubt the soundness of her choice. Robert treated the hotel staff with such arrogance that Joanna felt uncomfortable. She had never witnessed her partner behaving so rudely before. After returning from her honeymoon, Joanna called her mother to express her worries. She admitted she was questioning her decision to marry Robert, realizing she didn't know him well enough. She was disturbed by his behavior during the honeymoon and feared his rudeness might eventually be directed at her. Although she began to see her marriage as a mistake, Joanna didn't end the relationship right away after returning from South Africa. She still hoped she could change him. This decision was likely influenced by the pregnancy she discovered after the trip. Like many women, she believed that having a baby would encourage Robert to become more attentive and caring as a father. However, Robert's actions seemed to indicate otherwise, undermining her hopes. Instead of becoming more considerate when he learned that his wife was pregnant, he grew even ruder and more disrespectful. This negative behavior also affected her relatives and friends. Joanna, however, did not want a divorce because she feared that their child would grow up without a father, which she thought would be a major problem. When their first son, Alex, was born, things changed only slightly. A few months later, Joanna became pregnant again and gave birth to their daughter, Katie, but this second child did not improve Robert's behavior. Although he did not physically harm Joanna, which may have prevented a breakup, their family and friends could see how much he was psychologically hurting her. Robert was toxic and rude to Joanna's family, friends, which caused her a lot of distress. Over time, their differences became more apparent. It was clear they should not have been together. Joanna recognized this, but their children made it difficult for them to separate. After the birth of her first child, she often said their marriage would not last and that divorce was unavoidable. She tried to endure the situation for 8 years, but eventually realized she couldn't continue like this. Her final decision came after her husband revealed his disturbing thoughts, including violent fantasies about harming her and their children. He contemplating end one's own life by crashing a plane. Feeling terrified, Joanna filed for divorce in 2007. From that moment on, Robert's behavior worsened significantly. He began to openly express his strong dislike for Joanna's loved ones and even for Joanna herself. He started to manipulate her by hinting at the possibility of end one's own life. When that tactic failed, he began making indirect threats about harming Joanna and their children. Joanna was uncertain about whether to take his words seriously or see them as mere manipulation. She suspected that Robert was fabricating these threats to pressure her into withdrawing her divorce application. He told his friends that he didn't want to distance himself from the children. However, due to his job, which required him to travel frequently, he often spent weeks abroad, leaving little opportunity for him to connect with them. Despite his negative feelings about the separation, Robert never changed his behavior in a way that would make Joanna reconsider her decision to divorce. After Joanna filed for divorce, they continued to live together for a few months. An incident later made Joanna realize that her decision was justified. One evening, while they were putting their children to bed, a conflict erupted. Robert falsely accused Joanna of cheating, a claim he regularly made without any evidence. Joanna, who was fully committed to caring for their children, had no time for an affair. She attempted to defend herself, but her efforts seemed in vain. The argument escalated in the kitchen, and at one point, Robert grabbed a knife, confronted her. He even pressed the blade against her throat, threatening to harm her. Despite the serious situation, Joanna remained composed. She explained that any desire to harm her was illogical because her husband knew she was a good mother. Killing her would leave their children without either parent. Joanna pointed out that if Robert acted violently, he would likely face imprisonment. Eventually, she persuaded him to put down the knife. The following day, Joanna shared the incident with her mother and some friends. They all agreed she should report it to the police because it was a serious matter. They observed that Robert's behavior had become erratic and dangerous since she filed for divorce. Joanna was worried that if she reported her husband, it would negatively affect their children, so she wanted to avoid putting them under that stress. She thought the situation would improve on its own. After his aggressive outburst, she spoke to him again and made it clear that their relationship could not be repaired. He accepted this reality. Now, Joanna insisted that Robert move out of her house because she felt that living together could be unsafe for everyone. However, he refused to leave, saying he would not change his residence. Robert enjoyed living in a large house and a comfortable lifestyle. They even offered him money to help him buy an apartment, but he remained steadfast in his decision. Many believed he was holding out for a better financial offer since Joanna came from a wealthy background. Robert was offered progressively larger sums of money until he finally agreed to move out. This decision brought Joanna relief. She no longer felt threatened. They shared custody of their children, and Joanna was waiting for the divorce to be finalized. However, a heated argument erupted over how to divide their house. Despite their prenuptial agreement, Robert refused to give up the property. Unfortunately, they still had to communicate about visits with their son and daughter. They lived apart, and Robert even started dating a flight attendant from his job. Not long into their relationship, she got pregnant. Joanna initially thought this was good news, believing it would help Robert move on from her, but she was mistaken. On November 1, 2010, one of Joanna's close friends received a call from her children's school because Joanna's kids had not shown up. The teachers tried to reach Joanna but could not get a response. They eventually contacted her friend, who was unsure of Joanna's whereabouts. Joanna had planned to fly to the island of Man to visit her parents, leaving uncertainty about when she vanished or what had happened to the children, 9 and 10-year-olds. After receiving a call from the school, Joanna's friend reached out to her mother. The mother mentioned that Joanna should have returned to Ascot after their trip to Isle of Man. Although she hadn't talked to Joanna on her return day, the call made her anxious, so she attempted to contact her daughter. To her dismay, there was no response. Unable to locate Joanna, they decided to notify the police. By this time, Robert had already arranged a meeting with law enforcement, an appointment to discuss a serious family incident in which he was involved. After reviewing the statements, the detectives decided to visit the home of Joanna to check. When they arrived, no one was there. They repeated knocking went unanswered. The officers chose to force the door open to gain entry. Once inside, they quickly spotted suspicious stains in the hallway that appeared to be blood. Despite a thorough search, they found no evidence of Joanna. There were no signs of anyone, including the children. The police left the house without any leads and returned to the station, where they awaited Robert's arrival for the scheduled meeting. When he arrived, he oddly refused to answer any questions about his wife. This was surprising as he had originally contacted the police and requested the meeting. Due to Joanna's ongoing disappearance, the decision was made to arrest Robert. They intended to conduct a more detailed search of the large property where Joanna lived. The situation remained puzzling, and they were not in a rush to file charges against him. The authorities started searching the entire area while also talking to Joanna's family. They all insisted that she couldn't have simply vanished and had no intention of taking her children anywhere. However, Joanna's relatives expressed negative views about Robert, convinced that he was the only one who could be involved in her disappearance. On the first day of the search, the only verified information was that Robert had taken the children to his brother's house. Joanna's family found some comfort in knowing that Alex and Katie were safe. On November 2, 2010, Robert was questioned again. Whenever the detectives asked him about the events of October 31st, he mostly responded without elaborating. The police then changed their strategy and started discussing everyday topics, which made him more engaged. He excitedly talked about his passion for running. However, when the conversation turned to Joanna, he became withdrawn and anxious. He described his marriage with her but focused on criticizing her, calling her a spoiled child, trying to cast her in a negative light. He repeatedly pointed out that Joanna and her family were financially stable, suggested that they did not understand the struggles of earning money. By the end of the conversation, the police felt that Robert disliked her, particularly because the Simpsons were wealthier than he was. Robert grew up in a modest family in Edinburgh. His father worked at the docks, and his mother was employed by a bank. While they managed their finances well and met their needs, they were not as financially secure as Joanna's family. Robert, a pilot earning around £150,000 a year, had few reasons to complain about his life. Still, he often expressed dissatisfaction with his situation. The detective spent a considerable amount of time discussing various abstract topics with Robert, during which he was quite talkative. However, when they inquired about Joanna and the events of October 31st, he repeatedly said he had no comment. When the detectives expressed confusion, Robert explained that he was experiencing a mental blockage, making it difficult for him to answer those questions. Despite their persistent efforts to encourage him to speak, the detectives were unable to get any more information, forcing them to continue their investigation elsewhere. Joanna's house was extensively searched, revealing additional blood in the living room and in various spots in the courtyard and driveway. The arrangement of the bloodstains indicated that her body might have been relocated. All samples were gathered for testing, which later verified that the blood matched Joanna's. Authorities suspected that Robert had murdered his ex-wife, but the reason for his alleged crime was still unclear. 3 years after their breakup, Robert had begun a new life with another woman. Despite this, he expressed concern for Joanna's financial situation. He had signed a prenuptial agreement, which meant he was not obligated to worry about her finances after their divorce and would not receive any financial support. However, it became clear that Joanna had not been transparent about her family's financial status. Even after they separated, Robert occasionally returned to her home while she was away. He persuaded his children to provide him with a new security code for the alarm system, granting him unrestricted access to the house. Robert's main focus was on his ex-wife's financial documents. He became fixated on the belief that Joanna had significant amounts of money in different accounts. At one point, his imagination ran wild, leading him to believe she possessed up to 25 million British pound, which he thought he could claim if it weren't for their prenuptial agreement. Historically, the British legal system did not recognize these agreements, leading to inevitable legal disputes. However, starting from October 20, 2010, prenuptial agreements began to be acknowledged without extra bureaucratic hurdles. As a result, in the case of a divorce, Robert would not be able to claim any of his wife's wealth, and he was aware of this reality. The next court hearing for the divorce case was set for November 8, 2007, and it seemed likely to be their final meeting before the marriage was officially ended. This context may explain why Robert chose to confront his wife a week earlier. On Sunday, October 31st, Alex and Katie spent the whole day with their father. He was supposed to bring them back to their mother, Joanna, who had been eagerly preparing for their return. She missed them and had baked a chocolate cake as well as made their favorite dish. Joanna usually invited a friend to join her for such occasions because she felt uneasy being alone with her ex, but this time her friend couldn't make it, leaving Joanna to welcome Alex and Katie by herself. The police spoke to the children of Joanna, who provided key details about the situation. The argument between the parents started when Robert returned Alex and Katie to their mother around 4 p.m. Although the children were in a different room and couldn't see what was happening, they heard sounds that seemed like physical violence, described as dull thuds. After a while, the noises stopped. Then, Robert carried Joanna out of the room and placed her in the trunk of his car. He told the children that their mother had fallen and was hurt, so he needed to take her to the hospital. After closing the trunk, he instructed Alex and Katie to get in the car, drove them to his new girlfriend's home, where they stayed. Robert left them there and did not come back until around 7 p.m. When he returned, Joanna was not with him. He avoided answering Alex's questions directly. It became clear that Robert's actions during the 3 hours he was unaccounted for were a mystery, as was Joanna's whereabouts. Later, the police interviewed Robert again, but his answers remained the same. He was questioned a total of 9 times and never mentioned October 31st or anything about his ex-wife. After the final interview, he asked to speak privately with his lawyer. They went into a separate office. About 20 minutes later, his lawyer returned and read a statement in which Robert admitted to killing his ex-wife. Robert explained that he and Joanna had been arguing over their children's education. At one point, he lost control, remembered hitting her several times before deciding to take the children home and rush Joanna away. However, after, he realized that Joanna had already died. In a panic, Robert decided to dump the body and hide it in the woods. His explanation didn't seem credible because Robert could have immediately taken his wife to the hospital. It was also unclear why he chose to hide her in the trunk instead of placing Joanna in the car. It appeared that Robert recognized that Joanna was dead and wanted to shield the children from the sight of their mother, so he concealed her in the trunk. He eventually agreed to lead the investigators to the location where he had hidden Joanna's body. They indeed discovered the body of Joanna at the spot he indicated. It was clear that without Robert's confession, finding the body would have been nearly impossible. He took great care in transporting Joanna several kilometers away from the closest road and into the thick, secluded, near Legoland Windsor woods. There, he dug a deep hole, carefully leveled it, and covered it with leaves to hide any trace of what had happened. The police did not believe Robert because the hole was very deep and showed no signs of freshly dug soil. They estimated that he would have had to remove about 400 kilograms of soil beforehand, which would have taken a significant amount of time. Additionally, the ground was already frozen, making it even more challenging to dig. Given these factors, it seemed impossible that he could have done all this in just 3 hours, and they suspected he had disposed of the soil elsewhere. This suggested he had likely dug a grave in advance, supporting the theory of a carefully planned murder. They found Simpson's body in a black bag inside a plastic box buried underground. Later, Alex and Katie visited the site to lay flowers in memory of their mother. They mentioned they knew the area well and even had a secret hideout nearby. The last time they were there was during the holidays when they were visiting their father. It was likely during that time that he began digging a hole for his ex-wife while the children played in their hideout. Robert continued to assert that he did not plan Joanna's murder. He claimed it was an accident, stating that the stress from a lengthy and challenging divorce caused him to lose control. His lawyer argued that he acted out of passion, which could lead to a lighter sentence for him. However, a forensic examination revealed that Joanna sustained at least 14 blows to the head with a blunt object. The weapon, a hammer with a nail puller, was found at the site where her body was buried. If Robert had not intended to kill her, why did he bring the murder weapon into the house? He later explained that he took the hammer from his shed and secretly placed it in his daughter's backpack, but he could not provide a reason for this. Furthermore, other items discovered with the hammer, such as a protective suit, plastic shoe covers, and rubber gloves, suggested he had planned the crime. After the murder, he removed the CCTV unit from the house along with the hammer and disposed of both, indicating that he had carefully prepared for the act and behaved quite rationally. On May 11, 2011, Brown appeared at Reading Crown Court for a 10-day trial. He denied murdering Joanna but pleaded guilty to manslaughter due to diminished responsibility. The defense presented a psychiatric report indicating that Brown was experiencing a psychotic disorder when he killed her. Initially, a defense psychiatrist diagnosed him with stress-related adjustment disorder. The psychiatrist explained to the jury that significant stressors in Brown's life, including a difficult divorce, contributed to this condition, leading to mental and emotional instability that affected his self-control. However, Philip Joseph, a forensic psychiatrist for the prosecution, disagreed with the defense's assessment. After meeting with Brown in prison, Joseph described him as an intelligent man and a resilient person. He characterized Brown as a controlled person and noted that if Brown were unable to handle stress, it would be challenging for him to continue working as an airline pilot. On the first day of the trial, one of Joanna's friends gave evidence regarding a previous knife incident, when Brown had stabbed Joanna in the chest. In court, Brown denied that this had happened. The trial concluded on May 24. On the murder charge, the jury returned a not guilty verdict. Robert Brown was convicted of manslaughter. He was sentenced to 26 years in prison, including 2 years for obstructing a police investigation. Simpson's family and friends described the failure to convict of murder as a miscarriage of justice. Robert is eligible for mid-term release, with the remainder of his sentence suspended and monitored by the National Probation Service. In March 2023, as Robert could have been released in early November, Simpson's family and friends launched a campaign against it, citing the Police, Crime, Sentencing in Courts Act 2022. This act allows the Attorney General to block the release of any prisoner they believe poses a serious risk to the public. The campaign received support from former Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary Sir Robert Buckland, former Home Secretary Priti Patel, Jess Phillips, the then Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding, and Carrie Johnson, an anti-domestic violence campaigner and wife of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. On October 10, Justice Minister Alex Chalk KCMP announced that Robert would not be automatically released from prison but would instead be referred to the parole board. Robert challenged this decision in the High Court, but he was unsuccessful, arguing that Chalk had overturned a decision made by the judge at the original trial. Try to turn pain into strength. Joanna's mother and friend Hetty Barkworth Nanton was awarded a CBE in the 2024 New Year Honors for services to those affected by domestic violence and murder.